Right, come on, you four-eyed fat-faced fool. Tell us what's going to be in the new podcast from the two mics.
Well, plenty of buffoonery from you and lots of sense from me. What else?
By the way, Apple, you know, you're not going to be treated nicely at the end of this show, OK? An apple should be eaten, but you're not getting eaten. Do you know what's happening to you? You're going out the window, down 6 flights, pal, smashed on the pavement below, OK? Think about that.
Good morning, I'm Mike Graham, he's Mike Parry. You're listening to the two mics on talkSPORT. It's all gone quiet over at Spurs. The Premier League has told them they can't reduce the size of their pitch at Wembley, so the extra 5 metres stays, and they'll just have to get used to it. Meanwhile, some fans are getting anxious that there isn't much transfer activity going on. The only players we're hearing about being linked with Spurs are those that might be leaving. And is Daniel Levy keeping his eye on the ball? We want to hear from you. 08717 223344. Also coming up on the show, we're talking broken hearts, coping with the heat wave, and we'll have a round of listography as well. So let us have your suggestions for subjects you want to hear 3 stories about. Tweet them at the two mics, or find us on our Facebook page as well. You're listening to the two mics with me, Mike Graham, and Mike Parry on talkSPORT. This is talkSPORT. We are the two mics, and I'm delighted to say, in the midst of one of the biggest heat waves this country has ever seen, time to say a very good morning to Mr. Mike Porky-con. Very good morning to you, Mr. Parry.
And a very good morning to you, Mike. We will be talking about how to beat the heat a bit later in the show.
Yes.
But you've hit on a very good point here with Spurs.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I'm not saying that in itself, the decision by the Premier League not to allow Spurs to reduce the size of the Wembley pitch will be a terrible body blow to their, their chances and their form next season. But it's yet another, in my view, another little notch, against the prospect of playing a whole season at Wembley. Yeah. It must have seemed unpalatable before this decision was made, even more unpalatable now when you consider that Mauricio Pochettino's side only won 1 of the 5 matches they played at Wembley last season. Yeah. That was in Europe, of course.
That's right.
And it was
a game that didn't matter, actually, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. The one they won. And the FA Cup semi-final. Yeah. So, you can see almost all these Spurs fans now, flocking up Wembley Way next season, all holding up silver crosses or something. You know what I mean?
Some garlic around your neck.
Yeah, garlic, silver crosses and all that. Can the Wembley curse please be lifted as we start our historic season playing the, a whole campaign of Premier League games at the National Stadium.
Now, you're a very keen mathematician, as I know from previous conversations that we have had. The old pitch at White Hart Lane is 100 metres by 67, right? Yeah. Now, the new pitch at Wembley, which is the one they're going to have to get used to, is 105 metres by 69.
Yes, that's
right.
So
it's 2 metres wider, effectively,
5
and
metres
5
longer.
Metres longer. Yeah. Now, Anna Brazil said to me before, it doesn't really matter. Yeah. I'm not sure that's true.
Well,
I know he's an ex-professional footballer.
Who played at Spurs,
Who played at Spurs at White Hart Lane, of course. I mean, presumably one of the things about White Hart Lane is that the pitch is very close to the crowd, right? You're right on top of the pitch. But at Wembley, you're not right on top of the pitch, and because it's bigger, it will mean it seems like you're even further away somehow.
Well, I mean, look, a bit of the London Stadium syndrome might come in to start off with. The players will not feel as close to the crowd, because they won't be as close to the crowd, right? Now, Goodison Park was built by the same man who built Tottenham Hotspur.
Somebody, right?
It wasn't Archie Leech, was it? I keep getting it wrong.
No, you always say Archie Leech, but it was Archie somebody else.
Yeah, Archie Leech was in fact Cary Grant,
That's
wasn't
right,
he?
yeah, so I believe,
It was Archie Leech.
Easy to confuse him with a former football stadium designer.
That's right, the world's
North
greatest...
by Northwest.
the world's greatest ever film star. Yeah. In fact, Archie Leech came from Bristol and was known as Archie Leech until he arrived in Hollywood, and then somebody said, that's a really
terrible
bomb name.
Yeah.
We'll call you Cary Grant. Yeah. But Cary Grant did not build Spurs or Goodison.
Surprisingly enough.
Make that clear.
No.
But old Archie who built it, he had those distinctive cross metals on the balustrade of the main stands.
Yes.
Now, he built both those stadia so that the pitch was very, very close to the fans. And in fact, I remember when I used to go and stand there sometimes, if you went to the front of the terrace, your head, because the terrace actually went down below pitch level, was at boot level, 2 feet away from a player when he was taking a throw-in. And that's how close it was.
Well, that's why sometimes people used to get the ball in the face if they were standing behind the goal.
They did.
Because if it was literally just inches from the ground, like a daisy cutter, it would smack him right in the mush.
That's right. You see,
very pleasant.
No, not very very pleasant at all. You see, the fact is that Tottenham will go from having the second smallest pitch in the Premier League last season to the biggest next season. Yeah. Only Stoke City's Britannia Stadium at 100 by 66 has a smaller playing area than White Hart Lane's 100 by 67. Yes. And they'll go to the largest, although they could ask the FA to trim its width by 1 metre for certain games, i.e. FA Cup games and all that. Now, this decision, was taken...
How can they trim the pitch by 1 metre? Is that all the way around then? For specific games?
No. If you trim it by 1 metre either side, you see what I mean? Then you've got rid of the 2 metres that they're looking to get rid of.
Oh, I see.
But the Premier League are not having that. The FA might have for cup games.
So you mean like sort of width-wise?
Yes, that's right. Okay. That's right. Yeah. Now it says here in this report I'm looking at, the Premier League have told them they'll not be able to alter the dimensions of the pitch to replicate those of White Hart Lane. Now, years ago, when I first, as a kid, I got a copy of the laws of Football Association and all that. Right. There were big parameters in how big your pitch could be. I think it was from 100 to 120 long and something like, 55 to 70 wide or something like that.
Yes.
But now I didn't realise the Premier League have introduced a new rule 2 years ago, standardising all pitch sizes to 100 by 68.
Because I seem to remember, and you'll probably be able to back me up on this, when I played football at school, and you would travel to various different schools to play your games, lots of different pitches with lots of different sizes.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And sometimes you turn up at some place and go, blimey, look at the size of this pitch. Well, it's absolutely massive.
I remember when you were about sort of 13 or 14, you'd go to away schools, you're right, and you'd play on the first 11 pitch, which was massive. Yeah. I agree, but even those pitches were of varying sizes.
It was very frightening if they had proper nets on the goals as well, you know what I mean?
Sure, that's right.
Sorry to have interrupted you.
No, not at all. I took all those points in, thank you. Chelsea, Everton and Liverpool are among 7 Premier League clubs who received an exemption to have a smaller pitch due to limited space at their grounds. Yeah. But it does not apply at Wembley, where the pitch is 100 metres times 69 metres, and it will stay at that. Now, you have linked that, quite rightly, in my view, to a great deal of inactivity.
Well, there is a great deal of inactivity.
At White Hart Lane, which, of course, is being knocked down as we speak, the new White Hart Lane, or the new Spurs Stadium.
They're building the new stadium at some speed. I mean, you would think it was being built in China.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not so much the size of it, is the speed with which it's going up.
Yes.
No,
it is. But you're saying that... Are you saying then that you think that the whole club, led by Mr. Levy, of course, may have been distracted from their main task, which is to prepare a new and dynamic Spurs team next season, by the fact that they are so engrossed in old ground going down, new ground going up, moving to temporary ground is Spurs, can't get the pitch size they want?
I think Daniel Levy, who's a bit of a controversial figure, because some Spurs fans think that he's not great for the club, others think that he's done quite well to steer them through the choppy waters of the whole Gareth Bale sale, bringing in loads of more players who didn't work, getting a new manager involved, moving to the new ground, getting Wembley sorted out. But I wonder whether he's just kind of sitting on his laurels now and going, well, I've sorted out the big problems the club had, and he's taken his eye slightly off the ball. Because when I look down all the stories around about this week about the transfer business, it's all about Liverpool, it's about Chelsea and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, it's all about Manchester City, who are preparing to make a bid for Aubameyang from Borussia Dortmund, it's about West Ham, it's about Joe Hart possibly going to Manchester United, it's about Danny Alves saying that he might want to leave Juventus and come to Manchester City. It's all about lots of other clubs, but not anything about Spurs. Spurs don't appear to be in the business of signing anyone.
I have to leap to Mr. Levy's defence. He's certainly not sitting on his laurels. I mean, he's one of the most active chairmen. Well, they're all active. They all love their clubs and they all get busy. And Mr.
But
Levy's
why am I not reading
them.
anything about Mr. Levy buying any players?
Well, because he doesn't buy them. In effect, Mr. Pochettino should be buying them. But I mean, I know what you mean. What you're saying is there doesn't seem to be a release of funds necessarily. Now, the thing is, although you said, he's steering through choppy waters, most of the Gareth Bale money, the 85 million, was wasted. You ask anybody. Ask
I know,
our pals who are there.
But what I'm saying is
I think half of the players left within 2 years.
Did, but that's what I'm saying. They had to then reset the whole business because they brought all these players in and they didn't work.
That's right.
So those were the choppy waters I was talking about. Let's have a conversation with some Spurs fans though, because you must be getting a bit more nervous about the new season. The pitch is not going to be smaller. No. It's going to be bigger than you've been used to. You're going to
hate that
at Wembley, where the record is not very good.
Yes.
08717 223344 is the number. I'm going to ask you to give it out in a second.
Right.
But first, have a listen to these names who are all tipped to possibly leave Tottenham. Eric Dyer, Kyle Walker, Danny Rose, Dele Alli, Harry Kane.
No!
All players who may have to leave Tottenham if the price is right. Do you want to give a number out?
I want to give the number out now. We'd like to hear from you, please, because I know you fans, you Spurs fans, you are so passionate about your club. Are you worried? Is the pitch size row just another little indication that all may not be well next season at Wembley? The number is 08717 22 33 44. Burnish that on your brain.
This is the Two Mics on talkSPORT with Wick. Save 35% on selected lawn mowers like the Flymo 37cm electric lawn mower. It was $79.99, now just $49.99. Do you know that we're about to enter the longest heat wave in 20 years?
Since 1976, I read.
I remember 1976
so
quite
that's
well.
more than 20 years.
Yeah, we'll talk about this a little bit later on.
Yeah, indeed, yeah.
Well, there was another one, obviously, 20 years ago.
Right, so that would have been 95, 96, 97. Yeah, it was,
well, 20 years ago it would be 97.
97,
This is 2017 now. Do
Yeah,
you know what year
right.
it is?
Of course I know what year it is, but
Good.
it's about 20 years ago. I'm trying to think what I was doing in the summer of 97.
Yeah.
And how hot was it? Now,
What were you doing in the summer of 97?
in the summer of 97... Yeah, I was Supremo at the Press Association. I was running the world's biggest domestic news agency.
Is that right?
Very successly, I hasten to add.
I don't think it's bigger than the Associated Press, is it?
No, that's an international agency. I said domestic news agency, yeah. And yeah, I remember it being very hot because our offices were near Victoria Station.
Yes.
And
It's very hot over there.
Well, stations get very hot because there's a lot of hot locomotives in them, which start even more
steam
heat.
trains then, were
No,
there?
not any steam trains.
Becky says this, educational start to the show. I always wondered what Cary Grant did when he wasn't acting. Apparently he designed great stadiums.
Yeah, that's right, absolutely.
Jerry says it was Archibald Leech who designed
was
Goodison.
it? Oh, there you go.
So maybe you got it right.
Oh, well, maybe Cary Grant was called Archie somebody else.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm a Spurs fan, says Gabriel, and this pitch thing is a worry. It's already planting seeds of doubt in players' minds and
Seeds
gives
of doubt?
others teams the edge. Now, seeds of doubt is a very good phrase, particularly when you're talking about grass seeds.
Yeah.
And I think it is a worry because Wembley clearly is a place where Spurs fans don't like watching their team play because the team themselves don't appear to have the confidence to play the way they play at White Hart Lane. It's quite simple, isn't it?
And look what happened to their North London rivals, Arsenal, when they went to a bigger stadium with, with more space between the pitch and the fans.
Yeah. Well, let's talk to some Spurs fans and find out what they make of it all. 08717 22 33 44. Alan is a Spurs fan. Let's start off with him. Alan, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, sir.
What would you like to tell us, Alan?
Well, I'm just sitting here sort of shaking my head listening to the stuff you're talking about.
Why?
Well,
have you got a condition?
No. I mean, you say about Spurs haven't bought anybody yet. I don't know if you noticed, it's the middle of June and the transfer window closes at the end of August.
Well, I'm not saying they haven't bought anybody. I'm saying they're not even being talked about as if they're going to buy anybody.
But then you say, but all these other clubs like Liverpool and United, they're all doing their business. Well, they finished quite a long way behind Spurs. Chelsea haven't done any business. They were the only team that finished above Spurs.
Well, Chelsea don't need to do much business because they won the league, didn't they?
Exactly, so maybe Spurs don't need to do too much.
Well, I think you will
find...
Do
you want to finish second again?
But, Alan, I think that if you saw the way that Spurs performed at Wembley, if you saw the way that Spurs performed in the Champions League and in Europe in general, you would think you would want to improve the side, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I agree with that. But like I said, there's a couple of months, 2.5 months to go.
Well, Luke, hang on. I'm sorry. I'm not sure if you understand the mechanics of a football club. How many weeks is it till your players return to pre-season training? Less than 3.
You're talking about Daniel Levy. You know what he's like.
Hang on.
He'll sign 4 players at 11 o'clock on the last night of the window.
Well, how often has that worked? It's never really worked, has it? What I'm saying is that you need your players in early in the summer to make sure when you go back to pre-season training, you're all there to start planning on how you're going to achieve glorious victory for the season. Now, look at some other clubs, and I'm not going to mention mine because obviously it's Everton.
Yeah, let's try and have a day where you don't mention Everton.
That's what I mean. They've signed 2, 3, maybe even 4 players, and what we're talking about is not that you haven't signed any players, but what Mr. Graham is saying, and I endorse this, is it doesn't even look like you're going to be signing some players. Where's the activity?
Can I say one other thing?
Please.
You're talking about, you gave us a big list of all the players that are tipped to leave Tottenham.
You could leave, yes.
Where these tips and these links come from. It's just newspaper gossip.
Well, it's not, no.
Won't be going anywhere.
Well, no, newspaper gossip stems, Alan, and I can tell you this, having worked for newspapers for many, many years, comes from people saying it, right? That means their agents are saying it. That means their agents might be trying to up their fees. Their agents might be trying to gain more money for them. The point is, though, they are being linked. Dyer, Man United. Kyle Walker, Man City. Danny Rose, Man United. Dele Alli, Real Madrid. Harry Kane, Real Madrid as well. So, I mean, it's not just newspaper talk. It is a possibility in the same way that it's possible that they will sign people at the end of the transfer window.
I'd say...
But, Alan, we've got to leave it there because we've got full time down in New Zealand.
Okay.
We're going to go to Russell Hargreaves and find out what the score is as it all closes down.
Yeah, evening, guys, from here where the British and Irish Lions have beaten the Chiefs by 34 points to 6. So that's 2 back-to-back big wins on tour, momentum building nicely. Head of that first test against the All Blacks proper this coming Saturday, of course, on talkSPORT. It was 13-6 at half-time and pretty tight with a try from Jack Noel, but Donald's boot for the home team meant that they were pretty much in it from Stephen Donald. Second half, though, the Lions really pulled away. Their attacking play had much more cohesion, things really ticking and clicking in terms of the handling. A penalty try, second from Jack Noel, and one as well from Jared Payne, probably the pick of the bunch, but the last 2 tries much more beautiful on the eye, and things do seem to be coming together. But of course, one almighty test come Auckland on Saturday. Can only beat what's in front of you, though, and the Lions have done it in front of nearly 30,000 here in Hamilton. They've beaten the Chiefs by 34 points to 6.
Lions update on talkSPORT with Audi. Voorsprong-Dirk-Techniek.
And the first big test, of course, coming up on Saturday morning, right here on talkSPORT is live. The All Blacks against the British and Irish Lions. Let's go back to the calls. Dave is a Spurs fan. Dave, a very good morning to you.
Good morning. I'd just like to talk to Mike Parry.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
I mean, these poor footballers, Didhams, they've got to play on one of the finest pitches in Great Britain.
One of the most energy-sapping, you're right.
Hang on, let me finish. It's going to be a little bigger. Now, surely these great players, that will give them more room to express themselves. If I remember, a couple of years ago, you're an advocate of players going down to 9 players a team.
Yeah, indeed. Right? But Mr. Pochettino, Dave...
I totally agree with you, because the players have got so much fitter and faster.
Yeah.
And all you see now is 11 aside, and they're all congealed in the middle of the pitch. So if you've got a bigger pitch, they're going to actually have more room, aren't they?
You've made a very good point, Dave. Hang on, Mike. You made a very good point there. But what I would say is, Dave, the request initially to cut the pitch down to smaller was from Mr. Pochettino, because what he plays is he plays that pressing game, OK? I can't define the pressing game to you, but that's what he plays, and he plays it better, he says, on a smaller pitch. It suits his style of football. So although your argument is technically right, it's not in the eyes of your manager.
Well, No,
well, he's paid millions to run the team.
Don't you think the football's got a bit boring these days?
No, I don't. I think it's very exciting, actually. And I think that if he's saying, I want a smaller pitch, and they say no, that's a body blow.
Oh, poor him.
Well, you keep saying that, but that's what he wants.
Well, you say that, Dave, but also, I mean, you can't also ignore the fact that up until now, and it may change in the coming months, but up until now, Spurs' performances at the new Wembley Stadium have been pretty woeful.
Well, it's the same for both teams.
Well, it's not, because it wasn't the same. It wasn't the same for both teams when they played in the Champions League. They lost to Monaco. Yeah. They lost to Bayer Leverkusen.
I mean the opposition. It's the same.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the opposition. Monaco. No, in fact, Monaco.
If these guys, if they can't adapt, surely. I mean, God Almighty, why don't they play on Hackney Marshes then?
Well, it's your team, Dave.
Exactly.
I'm not sure
why
what
you're
point.
rubbishing it. Yeah.
Well, I don't know why you're rubbishing your own players.
I'm disagreeing. You know, I much prefer to see them play nice football on a big pitch. What's wrong with Wembley?
Yeah, Dave, you keep saying that. That's your personal point of view. That's your personal point of view, but it's not.
Sure, you're a Spurs fan, Dave.
Exactly.
We're all entitled to it, aren't we?
Yeah, of course you are. But Mr. Pochettino doesn't share your view, and if you want to go along and sit in his chair in his office in the manager's hot seat and tell the boys how to play their football, I suggest you put a letter in the post immediately to Mr. Levy.
I've got as much chance as you have.
It's a good idea. But listen, Dave, why don't you call us back about 3 months into the season and see how they're getting on with the big pitch and the new stadium, and the results won't be anywhere like as good as they were last season, they were unbeaten at home. Right. I don't think that's going to be the case at Wembley. Do you? 08717 22 33 44. Please give us a call. This is talkSPORT.
I said yeah. I said yeah. What they say.
This is talkSPORT. We are the two mics. We want more of your calls, and we're going to take some more of your calls very shortly. 08717 223344. Are Spurs in danger of not attracting the right kind of players and possibly losing the wrong kind of players that they shouldn't be losing? Because Daniel Levy's just not really doing much apart from admiring the new stadium that's being built.
Well, you say that, but Nick sends us a text. It says, the two mics, we are linked to players, and Pochettino is just back from holiday, and we're looking to sign at least three players. Actually,
really?
Chaps, he's been very friendly.
Is he? Yeah, that's nice. Soulman says Spurs finished second. They are keeping Ali and Kane. Arsenal finished fifth, and they haven't signed anyone and will lose Sanchez, Ozil and Ox. Very possibly so, but we're not talking so much about Arsenal as we are about Spurs. But certainly Arsenal will be trying to do better than they did last year. If Spurs don't do anything about the numbers of players they bring in, they are not looking like they're going to do better than last year or the year before. They're going to do worse, aren't they?
And by the way, a few mischievous fans from up north saying that you, when you were giving a list of players who may leave White Hart Lane, or leave Spurs as it is now, you said Harry Kane to Real Madrid. A few people here saying, nah, Harry Kane to Manchester United.
Well, Manchester United might like to get him as well. That may well happen. I mean, Jose Mourinho, I'm sure, could do with a player of Harry Kane's abilities, and he might prefer to stay in the Premier League. Let's talk to Luke, who's a Spurs fan in Loughborough. Luke, a very good morning to you.
Hey, guys, you're right.
Yeah, very well. What do you want to say, Luke?
A couple of points to make. I mean, firstly, the stadium, the pitch size is... I mean, it's not a worry, but it all depends on the preparation that Pochettino puts into the pre-season. I mean, we've got to be playing pre-season on bigger pitches, maybe adapting the pressing style a bit. I think the bigger problem with the stadium is how far away the fans are going to be from the pitch. White Hart Lane, as you know, it's like a proper old school football stadium. You're right there on it. And the fans are going to be detached. And I think, I mean, when you're at the lane, it is that 12th man. The players do feed off it. It's always a good atmosphere. So I think that will be more of an issue than the actual pitch size. We've got the fittest team in the league by the way that Pochettino plays them. And in terms of the team, I think you got to look at where Spurs need to improve. And player for player, we've got an absolutely fantastic starting 11. I mean, unless I'm much mistaken, we scored the most goals, conceded the fewest goals, lost the fewest games. So the squad doesn't need overhauling or major improvement.
That's all. Luke, that's all fine, providing the squad remains what it is. But if some people leave the squad, then you've got to think about that.
Yeah, absolutely. But there are certain players within that squad that you can leave and that can be replaced. Kyle Walker. If Man City want to pay 40 million for Kyle Walker, then a lot of Spurs fans would drive him up there themselves. Because defensively, he's not that great. He's just exceptionally fast and gets himself back into position before he gets in trouble. So we have been linked with a few players, that Aurea at the I think the PSG right back, the Porto right back. And also we've been linked with that Lazio striker, Kate, I can't say his name, Keita or something, as a replacement for potentially Vincent Janssen being moved on, because that's obviously not worked out. I think we need a better squad in terms of the second 11 that are coming in. Probably needs a little bit more quality.
Luke, have you thought about worrying about why so many of your players seem prepared to leave the club? Is that not a worry?
Well, I mean, look, we've signed everyone. The one that worries me most would be Alderweireld. He needs a contract, and pay him what he wants.
Well, what about Dele Alli? What about Dele Alli being poached?
I think it all depends on. We need to win things at the end of the day. Like, even if we do finish second or third next season, win an FA Cup or something like that, the core group of players, like the best players in that team, and the team overall, seem to be a very cohesive unit. They get on exceptionally well, and I think the view is from the players themselves that what they're actually portraying themselves as a cohesive unit that want to win things at Spurs. I don't see Dele Alli, Harry Kane, people, Christian Eriksen leaving in the next couple of years unless Spurs fail to kick on and actually win a couple of trophies, even if it's the League Cup, the FA Cup, something like that.
I think it'll be a tragedy if this squad breaks up, actually.
Yeah.
I think you've got potentially
I think the potential is terrific, but the problem is like some say Arsenal has suffered from over the years, is that, you know, this kind of straight-jacketed pay policy that is operated at the club means that players will leave because they can look at what other players are making, and they talk to other players and they meet them at various functions, and they go, well, why can't I make that kind of money?
No, and I think you will see, once the stadium's built and we're in the new stadium, I think you will see things like the wage structure change. But we pay an appropriate wage structure for the size of club we are at the moment. We've had a couple of exceptional seasons, but we aren't winning the league every year. We're not winning the FA Cup every year. Like, we need to be winning things, and then we can start moving on. I think there will be a couple of players that will potentially leave. But also, what you've got to remember is, I don't think Daniel Levy's taken a back seat. I mean, we've become a much bigger brand and a much bigger football club than we've ever been. But
true.
At the same time, other clubs don't want to deal with Daniel Levy. I mean, if you fine, come in, get Carl Walker, but you're paying 40+ million for him. You want Eric Dyer, fine, but you're paying 50-60 million for him. People don't want to negotiate with Daniel Levy, and we've got a great youth set up. We've got great players coming through. Pochettino believes in the youth, so people like Harry Winks, Joshua Noah are gonna get game time. So the future's bright. I think if you can keep 9 of the 11 starting 11 from last season together and replace with like-for-like quality, get a couple of players in that are going to be better.
It's very hard to replace like-for-like if you're losing Eric Dyer and Dele Alli. Very, very hard. You're always taking a gamble on replacing them with other players.
Yeah. Look, we're not. I mean, I don't see us losing Dele Alli, and I'll be gutted if Eric Dyer goes. I think he's a fantastic player. But Wanyama came in and did so well last year, and Dembele in centre mid is, when he doesn't play, the team doesn't play as well. So I think that the team and the club, now Pochettino's going to stay. There's no talk of him leaving. I think the whole club is on a journey and is bought into where the club is going. And plus, the likes of Harry Kane, Dele Alli, they want to play in the new stadium. They want to. It
all sounds like in your world, Luke, there's absolutely nothing to worry about, and I fear that you are very optimistic. I think you're very optimistic, and it sounds great, but I'm not sure that everything you're saying is quite as smooth as you're making it out.
No, I'm not saying that it's going to be easy. What I'm saying is this is going to be our most important pre-season ever, in terms, especially for the way we play and the pitch size that we're going to be playing on and the new stadium that we're going to be playing in. But so Pochettino, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in preparing the team to play at Wembley, because in the European games, things we didn't do that well. We were unlucky against Chelsea in the semi-final. It was a much, much better performance. Yeah. But
you are qualifying everything, Luke. That's the problem. I'm sorry.
Luke is a great Tottenham fan, and thanks very much for calling. But we've got to move on, Luke, because we've got other people to talk to. But I mean, he's a guy who sees everything through a sort of rose-tinted view of the world.
Blue and white tinted.
I don't blame him. I don't blame him for that.
It's a great text here. Usually, I agree with the two mics, but you really haven't got a clue when it comes to Spurs. It's very anti-Spurs today. We came second. That comes from Nick Homewood. Yeah. Nick, you are not listening to us. I am not anti-Spurs. I just said to our last caller, Luke, I said it would be a tragedy if that squad breaks up, because potentially you can win everything in football with the players of that quality. But what I'm saying is, and what MG is endorsing here, is that there is no activity at Spurs in a crucial part of the football calendar.
That's the way it looks.
I.e. the transfer market opening.
That's the way it looks. Let's talk to Cameron quickly. Cameron's in Bishop Stortford. Cameron.
Hi, how you doing?
Yeah, very well, mate. What would you like to say?
I'd just like to say, just firstly, Luke was spot on about everything he said there. I thought he was absolutely spot on. He's got a lot to add. I'd just like to pick up Mike Graham on one thing. It's normally Parry who's pork pie short of the picnic, but today you're taking the biscuit, mate.
I very much doubt that I could possibly be compared to him.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Well, you've done it today because I tell you, that the last game Spurs played at Wembley was against Chelsea. Yeah. And most people who know anything about football would say Spurs 9 times out of 10 would have won that game, and it's only for a couple of worldies that Chelsea won. And I've got Chelsea fans that have said to me they don't know how they won that game. Spurs were the better team.
Still, Cameron. I mean, I thought that our last caller had rose-tinted spectacles. You've got rose-tinted telescopes coming out of your eyes. Yeah. They didn't win it. They lost it. Chelsea won, and so that's the end of the story. You don't get marks for how many goals you didn't score.
It's not as simple about who wins the game.
Really?
You suggested that Spurs' last performance was woeful at Wembley, and it wasn't.
I didn't say that.
You listen to the tape back.
I don't need to listen to it back. I know what I said. It's what I do for a living, mate.
Yeah, and some would say he scratches a living. You're absolutely right, Cameron. But Cameron, listen, can I just put this to you? Something should be happening at Spurs that isn't, and we think perhaps there's far too much focus on the new ground. And how much is that going to cost, by the way? Because one thing we haven't done so far is we haven't linked the enormous cost of your new ground, your search for a brand name who's going to put in a couple of $100 million over the next 10 or 15 years. That cost of building that new ground crippled Arsenal for 3 or 4 seasons. It may be the same for you, and that may be the reason why we are not hearing anything at all about movement in the transfer market for Spurs.
I think you could be right. I'm concerned that the money's going to get sapped into the ground, and we're not going to have the transfer fee fund that other clubs aren't. But we never have done. We've never spent the same sort of money these other clubs done, and we're punching above our weight. Yeah. Recognise that.
But Cameron, when does punching above your weight then result in what you should be doing? Because as everybody says, Spurs have got the best young squad probably in the Premier League. They've got the possibilities of starting something really special. But when is it going to start happening?
Well, I think, as Luke said previously, we need to win something. We need to win trophies, and then people are going to want to stay.
Yeah, you're going to have to stop talking. You're going to have to stop talking like somebody who thinks losing is the same as winning, because it ain't.
I don't think that losing is the same as winning.
Yeah, you seem to have a bit of merriment in your voice there, Cameron. Bit of merriment, as though Mr. Graham's hit a raw nerve.
Well, I always have merriment listening to you two because some of the rubbish you smell.
Really? Is that right?
Very well said. Well said, Cameron.
Do you know what, Cameron? We always have a bit of merriment when guys called Cameron come on to our show. You know what I mean?
There's no need to insult the man just because he's making fun of you. You have absolutely no ability to take any kind of criticism. It's unbelievable. Thank you very much indeed for your calls. We'll take some more of them very shortly. Cameron, we'll talk to you soon. 08717 22 3344. This is talkSPORT.
We Cameron. OK, this is the Two Mics. We're on talkSPORT. We are with Wix. Now save 35% on selected lawnmowers. Like the Flymo 37cm electric lawnmower, it was £79.99. It is now £49.99.
Right, too. Now, it is one of the hottest days of the year. It was 33 degrees in London yesterday. I think it's probably not far off that right now, down at Royal Ascot. And, of course, our good friend, Mr. Rupert Bell, is there. Details, of course, of all the races you can find on our website, talksport.com. But the Queen Anne Stakes, the King's Stand Stakes and the St James Palace Stakes are all live right here on talkSPORT. Rupert, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mikes.
Yeah. Now, you must be sweltering down there. I know Mr. Brazil and Mr. Parlour were talking about all of that and getting sort of refreshed early as much as they could. But it's going to be a very hot day.
It is going to be very hot. They might slacken the dress regulations for men later on if it gets to over 30 degrees, maybe into the almost high and low 90s. So there may be some change, but at the moment we're still trussed up like turkeys in our morning suits, top hats, ready to go for what, as you say, is a brilliant day's racing. 3 Group 1s of the highest calibre to whet the appetite for what should be a fantastic week. But of course it's a Frankie Dettori-less week now, which is always a sad thing because he's such an integral part of the sort of fun factor of the Royal Meeting whenever he has a winner.
Well, not only that, Rupert, but of course there's that statue of him, isn't there, as you come into the course, to celebrate his historic day.
The worst statue ever. It doesn't look like Frankie Dettori at all. It's absolutely, it's a shocker. It was in a prominent place to begin with, but it's been secreted into a dark corner.
Hide it away. Now, Rupert, you're talking about the problems of the heat with yourself and all your colleagues. You're talking about the problems of the heat with the people who've got to provide refreshment. What about the problems of the heat with the horses? How do they react to very hot weather?
Well, they should be all right, but what happens is there will be bucket loads of water on standby as soon as the horses have finished, and will just be chucked over the horses to cool them down. So that's what you've got to be aware of. If you're in the parade ring, you might have to watch for sort of flying water, because quite rightly they will take great pains. There is a huge veterinary presence here, as you would expect, and it is important, and they will be aware. But these horses are used to running in big temperatures, but obviously the racecourse will make sure that every horse has a chance to cool down, just as if you were trying to run 6 furlongs, maybe 100 yards, Mike.
Try 10 yards.
You would need to be watered down afterwards.
Yeah, certainly would. And must make the ground very hard as well, doesn't it?
Well, it's good to firm, good in places. They have watered, so they will, no doubt, be continuing to water throughout the week to keep it at that sort of condition. Good to firm. At this time, we are in summer. That's what racecourses and connections would expect to find at this time of year. So there's nothing unusual about the ground. It's probably just the fact that we're near 90 degrees is more the unusual factor.
Now, the Queen's speech is tomorrow, isn't it? And I heard you talking on breakfast earlier, Rupert, about how the Queen's going to have to try and somehow work out how to go both to Royal Ascot and to the Palace of Westminster.
Well, as long as they haven't written too much on the goat skin, she should be able to get through it quite quickly. Then it will be, sorry, I've got to go because I'm going to something that I'm going to enjoy doing. Yeah, right. Which is Royal Ascot, which is very much her sort of... It's a mixture of state and private for her. Yeah, and it is a huge part of... She's never missed a day here, I think, while she's been reigning, as it were. So, this is, for her... the top of her priority list as her diaries was concerned, and she loves it. Hopefully she can have another winner here. She's got Dartmouth, who's going to have a bit of a squeak to try and win the Hardwicke, I think, for a second year running. So for her, it would be, we'd love to see her have another winner, but it is very much her show, this, and she wants to be part of it. So I hope she's had a quick word with Teresa and said, keep it short, if you could, because I've got a pressing engagement in the afternoon.
Indeed.
And you've got a pressing engagement now, Rupert, so we'll let you go. Thank you very much indeed. Rupert Bell, of course, will be reporting for us on all the races at Ascot. They're all live on talkSPORT 2, but the Queen Anne Stakes, the King's Stand Stakes and the St James Palace Stakes are live right here on talkSPORT. And I was just looking at the running, some of the horses in these races. St James Palace Stakes, Churchill is the name of the horse. It's 4-6 favourite. I thought, given our conversation yesterday about the new movie, you might want to put a few bob on that.
Well, that
obviously
could be,
betting in moderation.
It could be a pointer. Do you know what impresses me about Royal Ascot? I'm looking at some of the facts and the figures that we've managed to dredge up, right? So, for instance, 51,000 bottles of champagne, okay? I can understand that. 160,000 glasses of Pimm's. But what really impresses me is 131,000 pints of beer.
Why?
Now, because this means it's the most meritocratic sporting event in Britain.
How so?
Well, I've been there, as I'm sure you have.
I have.
You have.
Now, funny, I went to the Daily Express box there.
Yeah, that's exactly. I went to something like that. Yeah.
Something like that.
Now there is the posh side, isn't there?
Well, that's the only one I know.
Well, exactly. There's the posh side where you have to wear your morning dress and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, funny enough, I went there because it was it was the box for journalists rather than for the lords and all that. We went on the Saturday, which was the Queen Mother's Day.
That's right.
So there was no sort of tails and top hat required.
But what happens today is tails and top hat for the very poshest people. Yeah. Then those people in boxes can wear lounge suits and all that kind of stuff. But then there's a cut-off where the great unwashed are allowed to,
you mean the ordinary working men and women of this country?
That's right,
who go out and have a good day?
Yes, that's right, that's what I mean.
The great unwashed.
Yes, they're allowed into the course, but not into the areas where the hoi polloi are, you see what I mean? And
the hoi polloi are actually the ones you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a great divide between the two. So I'm delighted that those who, don't aspire to drinking 51,000 bottles of champagne...
Are you saying the posh people don't drink beer?
Well, they drink more champagne than they drink beer, put it that way. You don't see too many beers being served in the very top boxes at Royal Ascot. I can assure you that because I've been in them.
Have you?
And in fact, I don't think you can find a beer in there.
You've been in Top Hat and Tails, have you?
No, I haven't.
So you haven't been in the top boxes?
Yes, I have.
Well, so how have you been in there if you weren't wearing the right clothes?
I've been in what they call the executive boxes, which are on the wing next to the royal boxes, but you don't have to wear top hats and tail to be in there.
I see.
Particularly if you're of a working disposition, which of course I was that day, because I'd done the breakfast show with Mr. Brazil, as he did this morning with Ray Parlour. Well, I thought people should know that.
Yeah, well, I'm sure people are very
happy. If you're
happy.
a working-class person, you can go to Royal Ascot, but don't be too ambitious about which part of the course you want to get into.
You're such a
That's
snob.
all I'm saying.
You're unbelievable.
5,000 kilos of salmon, how about that?
This is talkSPORT. Very disturbing looking moves going on behind the glass, I have to say.
What do you mean?
They're all dancing.
Oh, no.
Well, you know, the people that are in there making this show work, to whom you pay no attention at all. Because it's all about you.
No. I pay loads of attention. I like to see
the people who provide the musical accompaniments to your ravings.
I like to see them throwing a few shapes.
People who organise the, the guests that we have.
Yeah, see how in the scene I am, throwing a few shapes?
You're in the scene?
Yeah, well, you know.
What scene is that?
Well, the modern...
Seen but not heard?
No.
That would be good.
No, I like to see that. I like to see a bit of action, a bit of... Now, the reason we're playing that is because, of course, we are caught in the most atrocious heat wave for at least 20 years.
That's right.
But I would say 40 years, OK?
Well, very possibly.
And it's disturbing me greatly.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, let me read you a couple of tweets out before you get stuck into that. Tom says, Parry at his man of the people worst. There's an enclosure for the great unwashed.
Oh, no,
Hashtag snob.
No, I said that with affection, you know I did.
And Tash Catalia says, Mr. Parry didn't have to wear a top hat and tails at Ascot because he was the chief bartender in the executive box.
Oh, that's very nice, isn't it?
And also one from Cotty who says, during the 5th year at Ascot as part of the Great Unwashed, the posh are often worse on Bladderation Trail, especially on the train.
Well, I can believe that. I can believe that. And also, I got a note, and I'm not sure who it's from, but thanks anyway. When I mentioned 5,000 kilograms, was it, of salmon or something?
Of salmon,
like that?
5,000 kilos.
5,000 kilos, that's right. We got a note from somebody who says, yes, I'm supplying it all.
Oh, really?
So it's a talkSPORT listener and a tradesman who's got a good business going there, supplying all
That's a lot of salmon.
All the salmon, I'm trying to find it.
I wonder what kind of container you would need for 5,000 kilos of salmon.
You'd need a lorry, wouldn't you?
Well, I don't know.
Refrigerated lorry, take it there every day.
Do you know, I had some stuff, talking of heat waves, right? I had some stuff delivered to me by one of the supermarkets last night.
Yes.
And the guy, as he came sort of staggering up the stairs with all my bags, I said, I hope you've got some air conditioning in your truck. And he said, no. They don't give us air conditioning.
What,
can you imagine?
Is this the Ocado type
Well,
thing?
I wasn't going to mention them by name, but yes, it was.
It is Ocado, yeah. Do you know what?
And I said, that's awful, isn't it? Imagine driving around town yesterday with no air conditioning.
Absolutely.
Horrendous.
Yeah. I think those guys have the worst job in the world. I see them pitch up in my place, sometimes as early as 6 a.m. on a Saturday.
Yeah, they deliver from 6.
Yeah, that's right. And the guy gets out, and he always looks world-weary, and then they get these 3 or 4 green trays out the back. And this is not necessarily Ocado. There's several companies who do it now. And then they put their trays onto a trolley.
Yes.
And then they wheel it down the road to the said building.
That's right.
They get there to find it's only a 3-storey high building, and there is no elevator.
That's right. Yeah.
And so they end up carrying them one by one up to places like your front door. And it's the most hapless job. They hate their jobs.
I don't think they hate their jobs. They're doing the job because they need the money, presumably, and they're doing the job because they want to work. So this is what I was saying to you yesterday.
Yes.
When we were having that discussion about whether working in radio is a real job. That's a real job. You finish every single day absolutely worn out.
Yeah, I know. Well, I don't want a job like that, thanks.
Well, luckily for you don't need to take a job like that.
Luckily, there are people who do it.
Yes.
Now, you showed me an advert in a publication this morning which said...
I thought you were going to tell me how we're going to beat the heat.
Well, I'm just telling you how you start beating the heat. Right. You showed me an advert for a machine that keeps your room very, very cold.
What do you mean, an air conditioning machine?
An air conditioning machine for £196. Portable. You can take
funny
it
how you remember
want.
the amount. It's actually £197.59.
£197.59.
Yeah.
So I'm going to head out and try and get one of those this afternoon because I did have the most appalling night last night. I mean, although I've got a big fan, which wafts cold air all over the place.
Well, it doesn't actually, does it?
Well, it does.
Well, no, it does not waft cold air. The problem with fans is all it does is it moves the air around that you have already.
Yeah.
So if you've got hot air, it just moves the hot air around. It doesn't cool it down.
Well, no, I can feel the wave of cold air stroke my, my skin. In the
I don't want to know about
night,
stroking your
skin. Kind of
skin.
stuff. Yeah.
Family show.
No, but nevertheless, it makes it very difficult. So here's a few tips, really. I have a shower in the morning when I get up and come out, to come to work, and I have a shower when I get home.
Yes.
A shower when I get home.
Well, in this weather, you can have a shower pretty much every 20 minutes, every half an hour.
Eh?
You can have a shower about every 20 minutes to half an hour. In this weather.
Yeah, you could do. I agree. I totally agree. But anyway, what you should really do is you should start having showers now before you go to bed.
Yeah.
Have a shower before you go to bed and put your deodorant and everything on before you go to bed.
Why?
I don't know. It says...
Who's telling you this?
I'm looking at it from one of my medical journals.
Right. Well, whose advice is this, is what I'm asking?
Well, it's doctors' advice.
Doctors,
yeah.
Right, okay.
So it says, use antiperspirant before you go to bed.
Yeah.
People who do this have been shown to sweat less than those who use the products first thing in the morning, okay?
Right.
And then I suppose you just go out. Now, antiperspirants generally contain aluminium chloride. Aluminium particles are taken up by cells in the sweat glands, causing them to swell and close so they no longer release perspiration. It's thought that by applying it at night, the antiperspirant has time to set...
Antiperspirant, you mean?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
To set in the pores during sleep. Dry the armpits and other perspiring areas of your anatomy.
What are you talking about?
And this comes from some expert called Dr. Hextall.
Dr. Hextall?
Yeah, Dr. Hextall.
Well done, Dr. Hextall.
Who says, what's left on the skin will irritate some people, so in the morning, have another shower. So you should have showers when you go to bed and when you get up.
I don't think putting a load of deodorant on yourself before you go to bed is a good idea.
You can apply a deodorant for fragrance.
Yes.
Or, alternatively... get a lemon, cut it in two, and then squash it into your armpits and everywhere else on your body. You can even stuff it down your trousers if you wish.
Has it gone
mad? No. This will change the pH of the skin,
right,
so that some problem-causing bacteria preferring alkaline environments doesn't survive, okay?
Right. Although I must say, I'll tell you something that you might find a bit odd.
Dr. Hextall is a lady, by the way.
Is she?
Yes, she's a
right.
lady.
Well, what difference does that make?
Well, I should just...
We're an equal opportunity employer here, at
TalkSport.
Yeah. When I'm cooking sometimes with lemon, right, and you squeeze the lemon into... before I had a proper lemon squeezer, I used to squeeze it just in my hands, right?
Yeah, so do I. Well, I usually get a fork, and I put the fork into the half lemon and really, mash it around.
What?
Well, you bend the lemon over the fork.
How do you stop the pips going into whatever you're bending it into?
Because I take the pips out again, don't I?
What?
I take the pips out again.
Well, when do you squeeze a lemon into something anyway? You don't really cook, do you?
No, I squeeze lemon over my fish when I'm having fish and chips.
Oh, when you're having fish and chips, I see. Okay.
And by the way, the good restaurants I use put that gauze over the lemon so that the pips don't come out, okay?
I see. All right.
Yeah,
that's great. Well, anyway, I'm talking about cooking, right? Which is, I know something which is anathema to you. Yeah. But what I used to do was I'd have a lemon juice on my hands, right? And
I quite like that feeling.
I used to rub it on my face.
Yes, I like that.
Because I think it feels good for your skin.
Yeah,
but I'm not going to stick any lemons down my trousers anytime soon.
No, okay.
But let me tell you more about this portable air conditioning unit, okay? Because I think you have to buy it online.
Right.
But it's apparently its makers claim the technology is based on the material developed for the Russian military.
Okay.
So you'll like all that.
The Russian military.
The Russian military.
They know what they're doing. Those Russian militaries.
It's a 17-centimetre square box with a fan, a water reservoir, and a temperature gauge which humidifies, cools, and cleans the air.
Right.
So it means that when you've
Sounds really good.
Now, if you put something like that in front of a fan, then you can use the fan to push the cold air around.
Oh, I see. Really?
You know what I mean?
It's like a double whammy.
Well, it's got its own fan, yeah, but you can make it even better.
Okay, now...
Or why not buy two of them? You've got enough money.
Yeah, I could buy two, yeah. Now, my feeling is that those would be developed in Russian tank warfare.
You think?
Because the hottest place to be when you're fighting a battle is inside of a tank. And even more
Well, that depends what time of year it is, really, doesn't it?
No, not really.
I mean, if you were in Siberia in the winter, you're not going to be very hot.
You'd be very hot because the engine in a tank, which is huge, something like 6 litres, something like that.
6 litres.
Yeah, is enclosed within the armour of the tank.
Is that right?
A tank is, in fact, a mobile furnace, right? I know what you're laughing at. A tank is a mobile...
No, it's not.
It is.
It is not a mobile furnace.
A tank is a mobile furnace, and you need incredible depths of air conditioning in it. So I reckon those machines, if they're developed through Russian technology...
So basically the people who are in tanks are getting cooked in there, are they?
They certainly
in
are.
Your view?
No, they certainly
rubbish.
are. I'll tell you what.
Absolute rubbish.
When I first started...
When
I first started on the national newspaper, the Daily Express, in Manchester...
They had their own tank.
No, they didn't have their own tank. But the 3 guys on the news desk were all very old and had served in the Second World War.
Right.
And one of them was called Bob. I can't remember his name now, but he's
seen the time. Look, we haven't got time for this story.
Anyway, his name was Bob Blakey.
Come back to it. Bob Blakey.
Bob Blakey.
Yeah.
And guess what? When he was 19, he was in the Desert Rats.
Right.
And they had tanks, like with old Montgomery.
So this is where your story comes from.
No.
1941.
No. Anyway, his tank got hit by a shell, went on fire, he pulled out his gun, and he was just about to shoot himself.
Right.
Because that was the...
Why is this a funny story to you?
Well, because you were told, if your tank goes on fire, you're better off shooting yourself, otherwise you burn to death inside the furnace.
Okay.
And he was just about to when the top of the lid of the tank opened up, and some English soldier said, "No, you don't have to do that now." He said, "You're not really English, you're Germans." And he put his finger on the trigger, and then the guy took the revolver out of his hand.
Really? What a bizarre story to tell.
Bizarre story.
At 11:15 on a Tuesday morning.
Yes.
Anyway, we'll come back to that a little bit later on. We've got lots more to do. This is talkSPORT. Gaz says, my best mate is a driver for Tesco. She absolutely loves her job, obsessively passionate about it. She's nuts.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Derek is in Newcastle. Says, how dare you call any of your loyal listeners the Great Unwashed?
Well, I wouldn't. Derek knows
you did.
That. No, Derek knows that. He's a postie, and he's from the Toon Army, and he knows that that's just a reference, really, to everybody, including myself.
Yes.
Now then, I have had some information about tanks.
Oh, yeah.
I've been told by various people, you are absolutely right. Porky is right concerning tanks. They have 6 batteries in the engine, which is massive, and it gets really, really hot inside. Well done, Porky.
Yeah.
Paul from Newport.
Yeah,
there you go.
I don't think Paul knows. I don't think he knows what he's talking about.
I think he's a former tank driver, by the sound of it. He knows a lot about tanks.
No, but I've got someone who is a former tank driver who's texted into 81089. Can you just let your numpty of a friend know that a tank is around about 17 litres for the engine, not 6. 6 litres wouldn't even move it.
No,
and that's from somebody
right.
who used to drive them.
I actually
you get a 6-litre car.
Oh, you can, yeah. I meant to say 16. Now then.
Oh, you meant to say 16?
16, yeah. I did mean to say 16.
Right.
I knew it was a 16-litre engine. Now, did you hear that firm smack of cup on desk?
Well, it wasn't really a firm smack.
Well, I want to thank a member of the production team, George, who realises the...
Well, you've actually remembered his name.
Of course.
That's a staggering
George.
red-letter day for George.
Great colleague. And the point is, we have now been supplied with some hot drinks because, of course...
Tea, actually.
It's tea. But let me tell you, you won't believe this, but hot
drinks...
drinks...
Did you ask for a litre of tea, or
no.
Did you ask for 11 litres of tea?
No, I asked for a mug of tea.
Okay.
Because it always reminds me of your loaf face.
Does it?
Right, now then...
I know you like to think about me all the time.
It says, have hot drinks to cool down, even in the heat. Now, it says, some people perspire more when eating food such as peanut butter, thought to be a mild allergic reaction. The body may perceive certain triggers as harmless and flush them out through perspiration. However, hot coffee or tea can also make you sweat, as it stimulates temperature sensors in the body, which sets off your body's cooling mechanism.
Yes.
Right?
Well, they drink a lot of tea in India, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Now, I
and they use that to cool them down.
I researched this, and I have to thank Sandy, our newsreader, for helping with my research.
Oh, yeah.
And it says, a rigorous experiment revealed that on a hot, dry day, drinking a hot beverage can help your body stay cool.
Uh-huh.
And it says, this is research done at the Smithsonian, right?
Yeah.
Which is in...
Washington, D.C.
Exactly, where, of course, I used to live, on the same road as the President of the United States.
Yeah, of course you did, yeah.
And it's... What do you mean, of course, I did?
Well, yeah, but even if you didn't, you would say you did, because that's what you like.
I lived at 607...
I've got no evidence of that. Where's the picture of you standing outside the building?
What building?
The building you say you lived in.
Well, I can show you my rental agreement. I've kept it.
Oh, really?
Because it said 607 Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington, D.C.
All right, bring it in.
I
Let's
will.
have a look at it.
And the President lives at 1600, okay?
Okay, right.
So it says, in Washington, we finally get a slight break from what is shaping up to be one of the hottest summers in recent memory.
It's really hot in Washington, isn't it?
Oh, blindingly hot. Unbearably hot. It's built on a swamp, so it's not surprising. It's built by...
Well, Trump's trying to drain it, isn't he?
What, the swamp?
Yeah,
Ooh,
keeps talking about draining the swamp.
That's right. Now, as we ponder the fact that this sort of weather could well become the norm in future decades due to climate change, we also remember a counterintuitive cooling technique.
What?
Counterintuitive cooling technique.
What's
that, if you listen and shut up...
Well, I don't know what it is. I'm not going to shut up. I do a radio show with you plank.
That many of us had heard of but doubted. In many countries around the world, conventional wisdom says that you can cool down on a hot day by drinking a very hot beverage.
Yeah, you've already said that.
Yes. Now, this has been borne out by Ollie J., who is a researcher at the University of Ottawa's School of Human Kinetics. And an expert in all things relating to perspiration of the human body. His thermal ergonomics laboratory, one of the finest in the world... Sorry.
I don't know what you're going on about.
I'm telling you why hot drinks...
Well, you've already told me hot drinks are good for the hot weather, but that's it, isn't it?
Hot drinks keep you cool.
Yes.
What it says is... additional perspiration can be evaporated by hot drinks, says Jay.
So what about the lemons? What do you do with them?
He doesn't have lemons.
Oh.
What we found is that when you ingest a very hot drink, you actually have a disproportionate increase in the amount of perspiration generated by the body, but the hot drink is hotter than your body temperature, so you're adding heat to the body and removing yourself of the perspiration which evaporates.
Really?
See, that's the explanation.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I can't take much of that in, I'm afraid. Patrick says this: instead of Porky spending £197.50 on air conditioning, why doesn't he just open a couple of windows? Hashtag more money than sense.
Well, the problem is, I had my Velux windows open last night, OK?
Right.
And the problem is, you open them, right, so the Velux means that they're at a 45-degree angle.
Yes.
I open them until they are, like, flat.
Flat?
Yeah.
Do you mean at a 180-degree angle?
180 degrees is quite right. And then you think, I'll now
So then the air's coming above and below.
That's right,
yes.
Absolutely. And you think, I'll be hit in the face now by a blast of the draft of the wind coming in.
Or one of those birds falling out of the sky.
Yeah, that's right. None. There was not a flicker of wind last night.
Very still.
I couldn't even see a leaf move on the 100 trees that you get down in Stockbroke about Surrey.
Really?
I couldn't. No.
Joe says this: has Porky overdosed on the Red Bull again?
What?
The furnace tanks from World War II. He's finally lost the plot.
Finally lost the plot. That's a bit harsh, honestly.
Gabriel says, so this week's Porky quiz should be on the workings of a tank and tank warfare. I predict 2 out of 10.
No, it won't be. I don't know that much about. No,
what is the quiz going to be on this week?
By the way, I've forgotten the name of the. I've remembered the name of the guy. His name's Bob Blake.
Bob who?
You know,
the old guy in the Desert Rat?
Yeah, who was going to shoot himself.
Bob Blake.
But they're
terrible story, that.
No, honestly, I tell you, they were instructed that if the doors are jammed, you can't get out, and the tank goes on fire, we recommend you shoot yourself. It'll be a very much less painful way to die.
Yeah. Here's one from Laurie, who says, what's George been doing for Porky to remember his name? Has he been lured into Porky's locked room?
No, not at all. He's a vital member of the production team of the Two Mike Show.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just surprised you remember the first time you remembered anybody's name.
Don't be ridiculous.
Absolutely staggering stuff. Now, listography, we still need some good ideas.
Yes.
So we need you to hashtag it listography, send us a tweet at the Two Mikes. We're going to do 3 things that you suggest we should talk about. And that's what we need.
And what was it last week? I forgot. It was very good. 3 car journeys.
3 great car journeys.
3 great car
which
journeys.
was quite dramatic. But you took so long to tell the first one that you only actually ended up doing 2 great car
just
journeys.
Did 2, that's right.
So let's try and move it all along a bit quicker.
Yeah, and we've done the normal, best meals, best holidays, all that kind of stuff. So we're looking for somebody who's got a really sort of unique idea.
Yeah. Best 3 tanks you've driven, something like that. This is Talk Sport.
Right,
Now, quite often, Porky, people ask the question, who was the greatest footballer you ever saw playing, right?
Yeah.
And people will say Dixie Dean, people will say Bobby Charlton, some people will say Pele.
Yeah.
Some people will say George Best.
I always say George Best,
Do you?
and I mean that historically. I mean, Pele and anybody else you want to mention. I always say George Best because I saw George Best play. I saw him play against Everton twice, and once at Old Trafford and once at Goodison, and he was mesmeric.
Right, and we now have an author with us, Jim White from the Daily Telegraph, who's done a little book on George Best and the magic of George Best and how he came to be quite such a magnificent specimen, really, in such a short space of time. Jim, very good morning.
Good morning.
Hi,
Thank
Jim.
you very
Thanks
much
for joining us.
Joining us. So tell us about this little book you've done.
Well, the first question, really, I'm sorry, Jim, to interrupt there is...
You've already interrupted. He's come in for an interview,
I know,
right?
I know.
You're here until 1 o'clock. He's only here for 10 minutes. Do you mind letting him answer the question?
But it's a very specific question.
Is
Is there anything more we can find out about George Best that we don't already know?
The interesting thing about George Best, and I think you're absolutely right when you say he was the best player, I think one of the things we would speculate on forever is what could he have been, if hed have had that kind of
But he did win an awful lot, in his very short career.
He was a fantastic player. I mean, you were absolutely right. In my opinion, he'd be in the top 3 players of all time. Skill, bravery on the pitch. I mean, that's one of the things about him.
Yeah,
he was playing at a time when savagery on the pitch was absolutely institutionalised. He was also playing at a time where they seem to play on ploughed fields. Imagine what he'd be like on the pitches now.
Well, funnily enough,
that balance.
Believe it or not, for the first time, I actually watched the Damned United last night, and I'd completely forgotten. I mean, that was my kind of period of watching football and going to football as a young teenager, and I'd completely forgotten about how terrible it was in terms of how hard they used to hit each other, the kind of tackles they used to get away with. Just extraordinary.
Extraordinary. But to answer your question, Mike, I mean, what is there new to say about George Best? Well, we've investigated his life an awful lot. This is only a very short short little biography. But what I'm trying to do is set him in a historical context. And just say, would he have worked today? Answer, golly, yes.
Yeah.
If you look at players like Juan Mata, David Silva, even Lionel Messi, he'd have been like that.
Yes.
He'd have been that kind of guy running a team in that light-footed way.
Was he slower than those guys are today? I mean, because he kind of looks like he might have been.
Initially, I think, if we said it in comparison, because the game was a bit slower, but I think in his head, he would definitely have been as quick as those guys. And when he was a young man, this is the interesting thing, and I explore in the book, when he was a young man, he was a very disciplined trainer. He worked hard. He used to do incredible things like he used to attach a tennis ball to a piece of string around his door frame at home, and he'd leap up to head it. This is, during the evening. He'd leap up to head it, and when he headed it, he'd lift it a little bit so it got a bit higher, and then he'd get up, leap up and leap up and leap up. Yeah. So he was determined to realise the genius within him. Yeah. The problem was fame completely destroyed him.
Well, he wasn't. Football wasn't ready for a guy like George Best. It was the swinging 60s, and in that decade, the world changed from black and white to colour, mostly because of the Beatles and rock groups and all that. But he was sucked into that because he was A, such a good-looking guy. B, he was so talented. Very, very talented people have no regard for how good they are, and they dismiss their talent as just something that came along. They don't cherish it. And he certainly didn't. And he became an absolute world superstar. What would he have been worth in today's market?
Well, if you're talking about the average kind of transfer this summer as inflation takes off in transfer fees, and you're talking Mohamed Salah, perfectly good player, 30 million. Yeah. Best would be 100 million. He'd have to be 100 million.
Yeah,
we're talking about Ronaldo
Jordan
going for
Pickford.
170.
Jordan Pickford, the highest transferred goalkeeper in the history of British football. It's extraordinary, isn't it?
I know. The thing is, though, you have to put the caveat with Best in that we're talking about Best as an asset on a football field. Yeah. A very limited period of time, 4 or 5 years at United.
That's right.
So that George Best, golly, yes. But the George Best of his late 20s was phoning in his efforts.
I mean, it was worse than that. I ended up, George Best ended up living near me in Stockbroker Belt, Surrey, and I used to see him. He used to come to pubs, and the thing is, George Best never got away from it. Even when he wanted to come in and sit in the corner with a glass of water and read the paper, there would be 7 drinks on that table within 10 minutes because everybody wanted to go home and say, guess what? I bought George Best a drink today. Yes. You know what I mean? And that sort of thing. He was an absolute phenomenon. But the thing was, when he was at his peak and he started misbehaving, Matt Busby didn't have a clue how to handle him and would go off to hospitals where he'd hospitalised himself through some shocking bad behaviour, some drunken orgy over the weekend and say, get yourself better, son, and get yourself back onto training on Tuesday or Wednesday.
And I guess there were no agents in those days,
no, because nobody knew what to do with him. Nobody knew how to handle him.
The system now is such that Best could not get away with that. I mean, players are now given a blood test every morning. It's to test whether they're oxygenated properly. Right. But obviously, sirens go off at the moment there's any drugs or alcohol within the system.
Or tobacco, presumably,
Best
as well.
was going to, seriously, towards the end at United, he was going to training in the morning after an all-night session. Yeah. I mean, that is just preposterous in today's football.
But he wasn't the only one either, was he? I mean, there were plenty of players who did that.
Indeed. I think if they'd had blood testing in those days, we'd have had plenty to talk about.
Jim, Mike and I had a mate who you might have known in Fleet Street, Ross Benson, and he was the diary editor of The Express and all that kind of stuff. He actually was in a London nightclub with George Best till 6 a.m, Friday night over till Saturday, and when they left, Ross said, "Ta-ra, George, see you later." Ross was going home to get a few hours sleep before watching George Best play, against Fulham at 3 o'clock that day.
Yes.
I mean, that's how crazy it was.
Yes, indeed. And you look at players now, and you look at the discipline required. I mean, we're very quick to castigate the modern footballer, but look at the discipline required to beat Cristiano Ronaldo. Yeah. I mean, quite extraordinary. Yeah. And if you look at players who haven't made it, who had all the talent, I think people say, would Best have made it now? Look at what happened to Ravel Morrison. Do you remember Ravel Morrison, who played for Manchester United?
I do.
He was in the same youth team as Paul Pogba and Jesse Lingard. And look at him now, because he didn't have that self-discipline to go on and make it. Yeah. Now, Best At 22, he was still potent. It all went downhill from there. And
well,
what
look at
a
somebody
waste.
like Jack Wilshere, for example. I mean, not because of any necessarily fault of his own, but, he's perceived to be a guy who has a lifestyle outside of football that's not the best. And, he's kind of just disappearing from trace as well.
That's absolutely right. Jack Wilshere's a very interesting example. And you say, could George Best have made it now? Absolutely. As a player, absolutely. He would have run the game, provided they could get inside his head. Yeah. And as you were saying, he was very casual about his talent.
Incredibly casual. The only thing that kept him going was that most of the rest of professional footballers in those days were not as bad as George Best, but lived similarly rabble lifestyles. They were always drinking after. Jimmy Greaves used to go straight to the pub after training every morning.
Smoked as well, didn't they?
Yeah, long smoked and all that kind of stuff. So what I'm saying is, the reason he didn't get caught out is because he was so incredibly fit that he was only doing by a factor of +3 what every other footballer was doing, really.
That fitness began, the deposits of fitness in his personal bank eventually were depleted, and he couldn't carry on.
No.
And I actually saw him play in a game right at the end of his career for Manchester United at Queen's Park Rangers, and it was embarrassing. You kind of thought, what is this guy doing?
Well, even when he was still a fully fledged professional footballer here, he hadn't gone to America.
No. He was kind of brought back by Tommy Docherty and played about 6 or 7 games, and it was
he just couldn't do it.
Embarrassment.
I mean, do you find explaining George Best to people difficult when, of course they can watch the film of him, but it's not quite the same as not really having seen him play? I mean, is it difficult to explain who this guy was?
That's a very interesting question, and it's something that comes up in the book because he became a parody of himself.
Yeah.
He basically made a second career, as you said, sitting in the corner of the pub, talking about how he messed up his first career.
Sure.
That became his second career. That's how he was financially viable in the end. And we remember the sort of Mrs. Merton appearance where she took the mickey out of him and so on. And you kind of saw that, and then how did that happen? How did it happen? But actually, when the mesmeric performance he put in, when Man United won the European Cup in 1968, it was Best who did it. He scored twice in the final.
Yeah,
exactly, and dribbled round half of the Benfica defence. At the very end, actually, it was shocking. He was actually ringing up Sunday newspapers and tipping them off about where he was going to be later in the day with another woman that his girlfriend was going to object to and all that kind of stuff. He did become his own self-fulfilling industry.
Yeah. He did indeed.
Yeah.
We haven't got a lot of time, Jim, so
No.
I just want to talk about something more up to date. I mean, with transfer window business going on already, we were talking earlier on the show about how Spurs don't appear to be that interested in bringing anybody along. Are you expecting, obviously lots of money being spent on maybe some not very good players or some, average players. What are you expecting from the summer?
Well, Spurs are at an interesting point, aren't they? Because they are now a Champions League club. They're doing well. Where do they go on? How do they kick on? Yeah. But they're also in that situation that Arsenal were in 5 or 6 years ago, where they've got a huge bit of infrastructure to pay for. It's been very well organised, and they're going to be in White Hart Lane pretty quickly. Yeah. But the cost of that, I think, is now beginning to eat into Pochettino's transfer budget. And let's hope he's got more gems up his sleeve from the academy.
Well, I presume the NFL club or whichever franchise moves into the new White Hart Lane will help pay off some of the debt.
Oh,
as well.
there's going to be, Spurs are an extraordinarily well-run club, and they are going to be a financial force. But this might just be that transition period, which, sadly for Spurs fans, is coinciding with a real opportunity to kick on as a football club.
You don't want that squad to break up. That Spurs squad now could have great potential, couldn't it? Another season altogether. If they all disappear, who knows?
Well, they spent a lot of time last season, if you remember, with pictures of Pochettino smiling alongside players signing long-term contracts.
That's right.
So if they do move on, and look, they've got an awful lot of players that people would like. Eric Dyer, Manchester United apparently want. Everyone would want Ali. Of course, everyone would want Harry Kane across Europe.
That's right.
They'd want him. Let's hope those long-term contracts keep them there.
Sure. Certainly for Spurs' sake. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Jim, the book is George Best Pocket Giants, available in all the normal places, I presume?
Let's hope so.
Yes, indeed.
Excellent. Jim White from the Daily Telegraph. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Porky and I will be carrying on talking about the heat wave. We're going to be talking about broken hearts.
Yep.
And, of course, we're going to do listography. I think we might have found one.
Well,
this
good.
is talkSPORT.
Thanks, Jim.
No shame.
I think we may have found a listography, by the way.
Okay.
Who are the 3 most fascinating people you've had dinner with?
Right.
From Steve. You think we can do that one?
We can certainly do that one.
I like
yeah.
that one, yeah.
Absolutely, I like that
so
one.
we'll do that coming up in the next hour.
Okay.
Also, have you seen the breaking news that Jose Mourinho is now the target of some kind of tax investigation in Spain?
It's all happening in Spain, isn't it?
Well, they've obviously got a very sort of one of these rather overactive prosecutors who've decided, this is going to be great. We'll go after Cristiano Ronaldo. We'll go after Modric. We'll go after Lionel Messi. Now we're going to go after Jose Mourinho. Now, I wouldn't wish to speculate on the motivation for any of this, but it's interesting that none of them are actually Spanish.
Well, A, none of them Spanish, but B, they all are extremely high earners.
Yes.
So I know what you're saying. You're saying, well, they're easy prey if they come from abroad because shuffling money around the world and all that kind of stuff. Nevertheless, they are very high earners, and therefore they're always going to be subject to investigation.
Well, I'm going to say to you is that it will not be surprising if we see more names being sort of chased, if you like. Zlatan Ibrahimovic might suddenly be named as the next one.
Yes.
Or, I don't know, James Rodriguez or somebody like that.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. I'll tell you what I want to talk to you about for a minute, just for a second.
Yeah, go on.
I don't know if you picked up, but Saif Gaddafi, who is the son of the late Libyan dictator, Colonel Muammar Gaddafi, on whose bed I bounced up and down for a while when everybody thought he'd been killed and buried in the desert.
Was this before or after the American Air Force tried to shoot you?
That was the day after the American Air Force strike. They all thought he'd been killed, so I was bouncing up and down on his bed in his Bedouin tent. And then some guy came in and garbled something in Arabic, hey, oh, here you go, yeah, and everybody fled.
Really?
And I said, what did he say? He said, Gaddafi's not dead, he's alive, and he's on his way back.
He's coming back.
Yeah, I better get off his bed.
Yeah, right.
But anyway, the point of the story is Saif Gaddafi actually survived the revolution which deposed Colonel Gaddafi after Mr Cameron, our then Prime Minister, decided to assist people who were opposing Gaddafi. And he was locked up for 6 years. But he's got out. He's got out now, but now the authorities are going to be sort of watching his every move because they believe he has access to his father's fortune, which amounts to $30 billion US.
30 billion?
Yeah, 30 billion.
Just the 30 billion?
Yeah, which he salted away, right, during his time as Libyan leader, and which, they all now say belongs to the Libyan people. Now, with $30 billion, I mean, that's bigger than the gross domestic product of about, 100 countries in the world.
It probably is, yeah. And also, is this the same son of Gaddafi who was associated with the London School of Economics? Because the LSE, I think, have got some kind of they've either got a wing or a study group or something named after Gaddafi.
Yes.
Well, they did have, anyway.
I don't think it is the same son. He had more than one son.
I'm sure he did, yeah.
And as I've done some research on this, I don't think he actually is the one connected with the London School of Economics. But just to give you a clue of where this money might be, the people investigating say in the UK they've frozen $19.6 million of his money. And they have returned $1.6 billion back to Libya.
Okay.
There is a £10 million Hampstead mansion,
very nice,
which the Libyans are asking to be returned to them.
Okay.
In the rest of Europe, £7 billion frozen or returned, including £5.1 billion in the Netherlands, but also in banks in Austria, Germany, Sweden, Switzerland and Italy. In the US and Canada, they have returned... Right, they've returned $32 billion from bank accounts in America.
So they've given all this back to Libya.
They've given all this back to Libya.
So Libya's sitting quite pretty there at the moment. They've lots of money.
But there's still $30 billion outstanding. Now, I'm laughing at this. The next one is the Gulf states. Estimates suggest there is up to $50 billion, an extra $50 billion somewhere in Middle East accounts, okay? And on top of all that, it's speculation is that funds have been stashed in huge amounts in South Africa and Uganda. So he's going to be a man who's going to be followed around for the rest of his life now to try and find all that money.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's never going to be able to find it himself, is he? I mean, you can't find $30 billion, but incredible to think that these people are able to salt so much of that kind of money away. Well, nobody has any idea that they're doing it.
It is alleged that Mr. Putin, the leader of Russia, believes that he has a very high worth in what he's done for the nation, for Russia and restoring them to sort of prominent world power status and all that kind of stuff. And it is alleged, although I have no information about it, that, he has made sure that his efforts have been rewarded.
Yes, well, I'm sure that there is all sorts of murky dealings that go on in that kind of neck of the woods, right?
That's right, yeah.
Very, very interesting. Now, how about this from PMC? It says, Porky Parry's the only man that can interrupt a guest before they even speak. Hashtag it's all about Porky.
No.
This was Jim White, who very kindly agreed to come into the office, into the studio, to discuss his new book about George Best. I asked him his first question, and you immediately interrupted.
Well, I didn't, actually. What I did, I just wanted to frame the question in a fashion that was more suitable to the occasion. It was a very good question from you, don't get me wrong. But
thank you very much.
But I've read every book on George Best, and you may not have done. So I said, all sorts of people wrote books on George Best. Michael Parkinson.
I suppose you didn't write one.
Well, I wrote my book on Rooney, of course, which has come to the fore again quite recently, and has now become a collector's copy. But no, Michael Parkinson wrote a book on George Best. Everybody wrote a book on George Best. Every journalist in the world wrote a book on George Best. I
think, did Ross Benson not do one on him?
He did one on Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
Ross had a good trick, actually. Ross, who's no longer with us, sadly, but he was a great lad. He came up to me and he said, God, Mike, he said, I'm in real trouble again, you know. He's always in trouble. I said, what's it's another divorce, you know. I said, oh, blimey. I said, what's the problem? He said, well, of course, I haven't got any money to pay her off, you know. He said, look, I tell you what, do me a favour, will you? He says, I'm going to go to Nick. He was our editor. Nick was editor. He says, I'm going to, he's a good chap, Nick. I'm going to say, look, I've come across some amazingly new information about Paul McCartney. Yeah. He says, and, I've been commissioned to write a book about it, and would he like to buy the serial rights for 40 grand?
Right.
So he said, look, everybody knows you're a bit of an expert on the Beatles. I said, I'm not really. I said, but I follow the Beatles, you know. He said, well, do us a favour, you know. When I, give Nick my synopsis about all this new stuff, he said, would you mind telling Nick it's all brand new stuff and that nobody's ever read it before? Right. I said, oh, Ross, you know. But you couldn't help but like Ross and love him. He's such a villain. Anyway, so the synopsis arrived. It was handed to me. I said, wow, that's powerful. Dynamite stuff, that, Nick. And Nick paid him his 40 grand.
Yes.
And
serialised the book.
Serialised the book, but the book sold about 3 copies because there was nothing new in it, unfortunately.
Rarely actually was. Sometimes the book actually never came out.
Exactly.
It was just serialised. Yeah. Incredible stuff. Now, coming up in the next hour, we're going to talk about how you can actually die of a broken heart, seriously. And also, of course, we'll do listography. We're going to do it on the 3 most interesting people we've had dinner with. Yeah. This is talkSPORT. Yeah. Good afternoon, I'm Mike Graham, he's Mike Parry. You're listening to the 2 Mics on talkSPORT. Coming up in this hour, we're going to talk about a broken heart, because a lot of people suffer from a broken heart. Yep. Some people recover from it, other people don't. And apparently there is some kind of that bad medical effects that can affect you for the rest of your life.
Absolutely. It says that the scarring on a heart that's been, traumatised by grief or something like that can be as bad as an actual heart attack.
There we are. We're going to be talking about the Lions. We're going to talk to Dr. Dana Dawson about the heart problem. And, of course, Dave Lundy's going to be along as well before Andy Murray takes to the courts at Queen's. He's already pledged to give his prize money to the victims of that terrible fire in West London if he does manage to win. 08717 223344. Bit of listography as well. You're listening to the 2 Mics with me, Mike Graham, and Mike Parry on talkSPORT. A couple more tweets here about your incessant talking. Haven't spoken to Porky for 3 days, says Keith Sorrell. I don't like interrupting.
It's very funny, isn't it?
And Richard says, so Porky once lost a fortune, which broke 2/3 of his heart then.
Well, that could be the case, Well, it does pain me dreadfully when I do suffer a reversal of the economic fortitude.
Oh, yes. And Lisa says that she's just checked that Gaddafi story, and it is the same son who attended LSE.
Oh, is it?
So
okay.
It may well be that some of that money, because I know there was calls at one time for the LSE to give some of the money back, because they'd taken huge amounts of money from the Gaddafi family, which was thought to be a little bit sort of unethical, really, considering how they'd got it. And here's one from Larry, who says, Ray, the Spain and tax, they got Messi and his dad for over 20 million euros, and now they are looking into the whole rotten business.
Well,
yeah,
you say the home rotten business, but, I mean, these tax avoidance schemes were bound to come in, Mike, the minute that footballers started earning up to £1 million a week, which is what happens now with the top footballers.
Right.
Of course you're going to get schemes in which people say, look, why should you give all that to incompetent governments? Of course you've got to pay your taxes, but not to be burnt and thrown away by incompetent politicians. And most politicians, in my view, are very, very...
well, they're very cavalier with other people's money, aren't they?
Cavalier and errant with other people's money. Look, governments don't have money. Politicians just manage other people's money, i.e. the taxpayer, and they usually waste it.
That's very true. However, the other problem, I suppose, is that in the football business, where there is so much money swilling around and where people come up with all sorts of new schemes, there isn't a tax code to cover it.
No.
It seems to me that the Spanish have now decided that there's a rich vein of money that they can retain and bring back into the exchequer, because in Spain I don't think their tax base is particularly good.
No.
Because I think the economy's been down the gurgler for a while.
Oh, it has, yeah.
So they've now worked out, we can get millions and millions and millions of euros back by going after all these very wealthy people.
Yeah, I saw somebody who went to Greece, or has been in Greece, who says the economy there is recovering.
Yes.
But it's largely due to the fact that tourists are flocking back to Greece because the economy is so knackered.
It's also due to the fact that they are being loaned more money in order to pay back the money that they owe.
That's right, yeah.
Which is a sort of ridiculous situation.
Yeah.
It's a bit like, me going to the bank and saying, well, look, I already owe you £100.
Yeah, so
if you give me 200 more, I'll give you the 100 back.
That's right, and I'll keep the other 100.
And I'll keep the other 100, and then I'll stimulate my working practices, and everything will go well.
Yeah, economic growth. Yeah, it doesn't work, mate.
No.
Now
that's trickle-up economics.
That is trickle-up economics, yeah. Now, I thought I was reading a joke story this morning. I read it in one or two publications.
Oh, yeah.
Tony Adams to be considered as the next manager for Sunderland if a certain consortium of businessmen who've got together buy the club.
No, it's a consortium of fans, I think, isn't it? I mean, I suppose they are businessmen in order to get the money together.
Exactly. They're going to have some acumen in business to be able to run a football club, aren't they? I mean, that is a joke. It's got to be a joke.
It can't be right.
Tony Adams, I'm afraid, is one of the most discredited managers stroke coaches in this country.
I can't help but wonder whether or not it's not about bringing him in as a coach, but maybe bringing him in as some kind of advisor. But I don't know why you do that
like
either.
General manager or something like that.
Or
director of football.
Or maybe just as a sort of addendum onto the conversation about, what the bid should be like and how they could manage it. But why would you?
The information I was reading was that, he would be appointed as the new manager. But I'm sorry to have to say this, and Tony Adams has been in this building quite recently.
Yes, and when he was in here, you went up to him and warmly shook him by the hand.
I did.
And said, hello, Tony.
Yeah.
I'm Mike Parry.
Yeah, I did.
Without adding, by the way, I've been calling you the worst manager in the history of managers for the last 2 weeks.
Well, that's for him to know.
Well, why didn't you just tell him that?
Well, I could have hidden behind the cupboard, couldn't I? And said, look, here's Tony Adams.
Well, you effectively did hide behind the cupboard.
No, I didn't. Great Arsenal player, great Arsenal captain, great England player, winner of multiple trophies. Of course I could have gone and hid behind the cupboard. I didn't. I boldly went forward to this man
but you concealed,
about 6'3".
Yeah, but you concealed.
And I said, hi, Tony, how are you? Good to see you. Thanks for coming.
You made out like he was his best mate.
Well, I was just respectful. I was respectful. Well, you didn't even bother going up to say hello to him.
Well, no, because I don't know the guy.
Well, you had to get to know him. He was in our building. You should have gone up and said hello.
I don't feel the need to go and self-aggrandise around people who come in just because you think they're famous. That's what you do. You go creeping and crawling around them.
Rubbish.
And you go, oh, hello, I'm Mike Parry. As if the guy's going to go, oh, you're the famous Mike Parry, which you didn't do.
No. But I told him my name. Now, if he was bothered about things I'd been saying about the situation
he's probably
regarding
never heard of
him...
you.
Sorry?
He's probably never heard of you. Look at the shock on your face. The shock. He's probably never heard of you.
He's probably had several reports back that I've not been overly kind to his,
I very much doubt it.
His qualities as a coach, but he did lose 7 consecutive games for Sevilla, didn't he?
He took them down. It wasn't Sevilla, though, was it?
It
wasn't Sevilla.
It was...
I thought it was Grenada.
Grenada, that's right, yeah.
Not Grenada.
Yeah,
Grenada. No, Grenada is a small island in the Caribbean.
Grenada
is a city in Spain.
But anyway, look, the idea that he could take on Sunderland and be their manager, I mean, look, I've told you the story over and over again. I saw him appointed at Portsmouth. My time has come. Sorry, Tony, what's that? And he's sitting there
again.
Yeah, in a 3-piece suit.
He's still there, though, isn't he? They haven't fired him, have they?
This was when he was made Portsmouth manager many years ago.
I'm talking about Grenada, though. He hasn't been fired from Grenada
yet.
not
that I know of, no, even though he lost their 7 last games.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
My time has come. It's my time, sitting in a 3-piece suit, and I think 7 months later, bang, out the door, you know, which is what always happens to him.
Well, but it hasn't happened yet. And I mean, in some ways, if this Sunderland consortium want to get a hold of him, technically he's not actually tap-upable, is he? Because he's actually still got a job.
Well, then, I mean, this club Grenada, they must have Granada, they must have incredibly low expectations because, I mean, what do they think he's going to do next season? My run will go on, and I hope to lose 11 on the trot.
Is there anywhere? Can he go any lower? Is there another division beneath the one that he's in? How about this from Mangan, who says, again, Porky claims to have read every book on George Best, although the other day he said he didn't have time to read books.
Well, that's when I was younger. I had more time to read when I was younger. No problem at all.
And Glyn says, add antiperspirant to the list of words that Porky can't pronounce.
No.
How does he do it?
No, I think you'll find that I get it quietly right. But I wonder what the Sunderland fans think when they wake up today and they'll see in their local evening newspaper, which is the Echo, the Sunderland Echo, that Tony Adams is being tapped up as a new manager. I mean, surely they'll go throw themselves off
when I saw it,
the roof of the former Roker Park, which isn't there anymore.
Well, they wouldn't be able to do that.
No, exactly, yeah. But that cliff near Roker, I mean, it was right on the
Roker Cliff.
Well, yeah, I think it's at the Roker Cliff. Yeah, it was right near the edge of the sea.
I must admit, when I saw it, I thought it was like an April Fool's story.
So did I, yeah.
Can't be real, can it?
No.
But anyway, we've got lots of other stories to talk about, including how your napkin colour can make food actually taste better.
Indeed.
So you've got to be careful what sort of colour your napkin is.
It is.
This is talkSPORT.
Right, of course, you are listening to the Two Mics. We're on talkSPORT and we are with Wix. Now, save 35% on selected lawnmowers, like, for instance, the Flymo 37cm electric lawnmower. It was £79.99. It is now £49.99.
A couple of people pointing out that Tony Adams only had a contract until the end of the season with Granada,
right,
so he may not, in fact, be in a position to take them any further down the Spanish football leagues.
That's right, yeah.
And a couple of people also suggesting that you've admitted you were complicit in some kind of fraud. I'm sure the authorities will want a word.
What's you on about?
I think you're talking about the Ross Benson story.
Oh, Ross Benson. No, it wasn't a fraud at all. I mean, the point is
people were quite happily paying money for something which was commercially viable.
Well, commercially viable. I had to make a decision, but to be honest, that's the way newspapers worked in those days. You know what I mean? I worked at one newspaper where the budget for buying up books was so large that we just bought up every book.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter if they're any good or not.
And if they never even made it into the paper.
Well, the thinking was, if it was any good, we'd put it in our paper. And if we couldn't fit two in the same week, we bought all the rest up anyway, so nobody else could use them, and we'd throw them away.
Yeah, it's a bit like buying footballers to put them on the bench so that nobody else can use them to play.
That was exactly it, yeah.
Absolutely right. Now, we're going up to Aberdeen now because Dr. Dana Dawson is a reader in cardiovascular medicine up there. Now, that's a subject that's very close to your heart.
Yes.
Given that you've got that, what is it, cardiomyopathy?
Dilated cardiomyopathy.
Yeah, so you claim anyway. However, that's so you claim. But
I was only in hospital for 7 months with it.
Dr. Dawson's going to tell us that you can actually die of a broken heart, which is going to be fascinating stuff. Dr. Dawson, a very good afternoon to you.
Hello, hi, good afternoon.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's one of those things.
Pleasure.
It's one of those things that people say an awful lot, isn't it? That it's in songs. You can have, you can suffer from a broken heart if your relationship breaks down, or your marriage breaks down. You can have a broken heart for all sorts of reasons, maybe because your football team has been relegated and all that kind of thing. But you've done some research which shows that actually you can, in fact, suffer heart disease, as it were, or heart problems because of it.
Yes, that's very, very true. So this condition is not known to us for a very long time. It's only been described about 15, 20 years ago in Japan. And it comes about as a result of somebody experiencing a very strong emotion, a very strong stress of any kind. It can be emotional or it can be physical. But the emotional one is the typical occurrence. So if somebody hears of the loss of a loved one, for example, or if somebody embroils themselves in an argument or conflict, or if they suffer financial loss, as you say, if their football team loses a game, that's actually happened. So yes, what they do is that they think they have a heart attack as a result of this strong emotion that they experience, and they typically call the emergency services, who also think that these people have a heart attack. They bring them to us. We also think they have a heart attack, and we only realize they don't have a heart attack when we see that their heart arteries are completely unobstructed. But the heart muscle is not functioning as well as it should do. And this gives the clue. And this is why this is called apical ballooning, because the heart looks like a balloon, and this is why it's called Takotsubo disease. You might have heard of that, because it takes the shape of an octopus fishing trap that the Japanese fishermen used to put on the bottom of the seabed in order to catch an octopus. So
I've never seen one of those.
No, I haven't seen one of those, but I'm delighted to learn about it. Doctor, can I just tell you that I suffer from dilated cardiomyopathy? I had it diagnosed in 2004, and what my consultant described to me was that the left-hand side of my heart now is just far too big. It doesn't do the pumping action properly. No idea how I got this condition. They think my father might have died of it 40 years ago, but they didn't diagnose it. Is it a similar sort of complaint, that the function of the heart is deteriorated because there's too much heart and not enough pumping?
Well, yes, it is. There are some similarities in what you're saying. But the very big difference from what you're saying is that this condition is very acute, so it happens very suddenly, and as a result of an emotion. So we know that there is a trigger in more than 90-95% of situations, and it's acute, it happens very suddenly, and then what is characteristic to it too is that it tends to recover spontaneously by itself very quickly after the onset. In the first few days after someone experiences something like this, the heart pumping function begins to recover on its own. So that's obviously very good news. Yeah,
but is this why we sometimes read of these extraordinary stories where a couple who've been married for 45 years, one of the partners in the relationship dies, and within hours the other one can die?
Yes, and that is a very classical and sad example, and we all know of stories like this. Yes, it is very touching indeed, isn't it?
But is that this condition? Is it?
It's not proven in every single case, because obviously, in a lot of these situations, investigation just doesn't have time to happen then on the spot. But in the ones that have been investigated, some of these situations have actually been proven to be indeed the medical condition that we are talking about today.
I see.
But were you just describing as well, Dr. Dawson, the fact that if people do suffer from these kind of broken heart type injuries inside the heart, that it can repair itself as well?
Yes, the heart has a natural tendency to recover its function in the first few days after they suffer something like this. A good natural process of recovery occurs, and that is obviously the very good news. So we used to think that people who suffer from this condition called Takotsubo cardiomyopathy or broken heart would recover fully in a matter of a few days without any medical intervention. But in the study that we've just done, we've shown that this disease has much longer-lasting effects on the hearts of those who suffer from it. We've looked at a 4-month time point, and we looked at the patients who were most severely affected during an acute attack and compared them with a group of controls matched for gender and age. And what we found is the subtle parameters of the heart function still remain abnormal at 4 months after an acute episode. So this is our newest findings, if you like.
I see. That's very interesting. Doctor, on a broader subject, but within this complaint, why haven't we moved on to treat heart conditions like the one you've been talking about, like my dilated cardiomyopathy, by injecting stem cells into heart tissue to try and reduce the bloating effect of a heart, an extended heart? Are we not moving too slowly in that sort of direction?
Well, there have been real attempts into trying to do that. That is not exactly my area of expertise.
Sure.
But I'm sure that you can find people who know a lot more than me about this. And there is research going on and happening as we speak in this topic, exactly as you say. There are some results. It's a beginning. It's a way to look into. But I don't think that we have come to the very expected leap that you are trying to allude to.
Exactly. I'm saying that, wow, here comes the magic injection. You put that into the heart muscle and all of a sudden it shrinks back to normal size.
It's not a phrase we hear on this show very often. That's not exactly my area of expertise. Because Mr. Parry, my co-host here, Dr. Dawson, likes to think he's an expert on pretty much everything to do with the heart.
Nonsense.
It's true.
It sounds very very knowledgeable, though.
Well, he sounds knowledgeable.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's one of the country's top heart doctors.
It's all a bit of a front, to be honest. It's a sham. But I mean, I'm fascinated by the story you mentioned about the sports fan whose heart was damaged because their sports team just sort of didn't disappointed them, really. I mean, what was that story about?
Oh, that is not something that we've seen. That is something that we've read in literature, because obviously these cases have been reported from absolutely everywhere. Right. But we have seen other sports-related emotions or trauma, if you like, that have caused this condition, indeed.
And I wonder if it's possible that people who play sport professionally could also suffer in this way.
It has been described as well, actually, mostly as a physical event, as a blow to the head with football, for example. We've seen that, or as a very strong collision. Yeah. And that is both an emotional and a physical type of trauma, I would imagine. So that has been described as well.
Sure. Indeed. Well, listen, very interesting stuff. Dr. Dawson, thank you very much indeed. That's Dr. Dana Dawson there.
Thank you, Dr.
Reader
Dawson.
in cardiovascular medicine.
Yeah, do you like to repeat what she just said?
She said...
I sound very knowledgeable indeed about matters of the heart, OK?
No, that's not what she said, actually.
She was referring to my knowledge of heart disease.
She didn't say anything about matters of the heart.
She was referring to my knowledge of heart disease.
She said that you sounded very knowledgeable. That was the end of the sentence.
Very knowledgeable indeed.
That was the end of the sentence.
Very knowledgeable indeed, right?
Well, it doesn't matter
Let's
to me.
just remember that. Very knowledgeable indeed.
Well, it shows you what she doesn't know about you.
Hey?
Because here's one from the midfield general who sounds very knowledgeable indeed. He says, why do I get the impression that when Porky says to a guest, that's very interesting, he's not interested at all? Hashtag not listening.
Don't be ridiculous. Don't be ridiculous.
This is talkSPORT.
I can't explain glacial motion. Why Los Angeles don't drop into the ocean. I can't unfold the layers of mystery or piece together the tragedy of history.
Time for listography.
Yep.
We've agreed earlier on in the show that Steve's suggestion, which we had many of actually, thank you for all of those suggestions that you made. Steve was the one we went for. Who are the three most fascinating people you have had dinner with?
That's right.
We thought would be good. Now, we haven't got a great deal of time
because
we've got to squeeze in a chat with Owen Slot down in New Zealand about the Lions. We've got to talk to Dave Luddy from Queens as well. So we can start with three. If you've got three, we can probably get away with two.
Can it be dinner and lunch? Or dinner or lunch?
Yeah, dinner or lunch.
Okay, fine.
I don't think it needs to be just specifically dinner.
All right. Well, I'll kick off.
Kick it off,
I'm kicking off with Mary Archer.
Mary Archer.
Who is Geoffrey Archer's wife.
The fragrant Mary Archer.
The fragrant Mary Archer. She was named as fragrant by a judge in a trial in which Geoffrey Archer was exonerated from particular charges. But within that trial, information was received that Geoffrey Archer had allegedly been paying money to ladies of dubious character on Victoria Station. Now, we go to this lunch, right, because Mary Archer's launching a charity, and I went with the editor of the paper I worked with at the time.
Yes.
And as we walked into the room and sat down, Mary Archer said, "Oh, I see, it's you lot," I indicating, we came from a particular paper. Yeah. And she said, when are you all going to start, when are you all going to stop writing all that rubbish about the royal family, which so upsets them, because, I do have some connections out there, and I don't like to see them upset.
Right.
And the immediate answer from one of our party was, well, we'll stop writing rubbish about the royal family when your husband stops giving women of dubious character packetfuls of money on Victoria Station.
Oh, yes.
A riot erupted in the whole room. All her people, all her team. Oh, you can't say that. How dare you? And the whole thing broke up. There was no lunch.
Was this before or after he had been found guilty of that then?
That was before he had been taken back to court and accused of having not been entirely truthful in the first trial.
Right. Okay. Well,
and he subsequently went to jail for perjury.
Okay. Well, so that's a story about not having lunch with somebody.
Well, it's a lunch that never happened.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose that doesn't quite qualify then, does
it? Well, it does, yeah.
Well, it says here, who are the three most fascinating people you have had dinner with?
Well, I'm just telling you, I went to a lunch to have lunch with the fascinating Mary Archer, but because of an explosive bust-up, just as they were literally serving the soup as the soup was being served, one mouthful of soup, so that qualifies for dinner or lunch or whatever you want to call it, and then it all broke up.
Now, how about this for an apposite tweet? Oliver, the Sheffield United fan, I predict that listography will consist of 10 minutes of Porky and MG arguing about whether Porky has actually had dinner with the people he's suggesting. Go on, prove me wrong.
Yeah, well, that was definitely a yes. Yes.
All right, well, my first one's going to be Tony Blair.
Right.
When I was running the Mirror in Wales, we were quite closely associated with the Labour Party, as you can imagine.
Yes, absolutely.
And I used to know Rhodri Morgan quite well. He was the First Minister of Wales.
Yeah, I know Rhodri.
And he's only just recently passed away,
He's died, hasn't he?
He was a great guy. And Tony Blair was the Prime Minister, quite early on in his tenure, I think. It must have been around about... maybe 99, 2000, something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, there was a sort of fundraising dinner the Labour Party was organising, which we played some part in.
Yes.
Which I arrived. I had to drive down from London, got down there into Cardiff, walked in, and Rhodri was outside having a cigarette, as he often did.
Yes.
And he's like, "Well, you're very important, aren't you?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, I see they put you on the same table as the Prime Minister." I said, "Oh, well, that's nice." I said, "Well, where will you be sitting?" He said, "Well, I'm not on that table." And he was the First Minister of Wales, so they put me not only on this table of about 10 people, they put me right next to him. And so, in fact, there's a picture of the two of us, which I'll probably show you at some point.
Yeah.
And we sat there, and it was a fascinating evening, not least because he wasn't really drinking at all.
Right.
And I was. So I was quite liberally being given glasses of Chardonnay or whatever to pass away the night.
Sure.
And I remember telling him how incredibly sort of difficult the BBC in Wales were, because they were filled with people who supported Plaid Cymru.
Yeah.
And he had no idea.
Yeah.
And I said, well, this is one of the reasons why the Labour Party doesn't get such a good showing in the BBC. It's because of the fact that all these Plaid Cymru characters are running it.
Yes.
He went, really, this was absolutely fascinating. But the one thing that struck me about him was that he couldn't believe anyone disagreed with him about anything.
Yeah.
And when he would tell you something and you would say, well, I'm sure everybody actually goes along with that, Prime Minister, he was like, really?
Yeah.
And he was quite shocked that not everybody thought the way he did. But it was a fascinating evening anyway.
Right, okay, very good indeed.
Yeah.
Now, my second one, I'll move on to another Prime Minister, John Major.
Okay.
Because...
Did you actually have dinner with this one?
This is lunch again.
Oh, lunch.
And this, I did, yeah. This was when I was Supremo at the Press Association.
Oh,
yes. And, everybody was, had to put on their best suit and all that kind of stuff. The Prime Minister, John Major, is coming for lunch at the Press Association, which they often did about every 2 years, you know what I mean? Just to, release a story or two.
Yeah.
But the problem was I was never very good at reading political information or interpreting it.
Right.
And so at the end of the lunch, I said to our boss that day, I'm doing a guy called Paul Potts, who was the editor-in-chief. And I said,
a very political person.
A very political person indeed. I said, that was rather boring, wasn't it? He said, what do you mean? I said, well, old Major was droning on there about, all sorts of rubbish and he said, are you mad? He said, we've got 3 great stories out of that. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, he's told us that there's going to be no change in interest rates.
Yeah.
Oh, right. There's not going to be a cabinet reshuffle. Oh, right, yeah. And there won't be an early general election. Oh, I said, I didn't hear him say any of those things. He said, no, he didn't. He said, you have to pick up the clues and put the pieces of the jigsaw together.
You have to pick up the hints.
Yeah, that's right.
People are saying. But that's why they ask questions in a particular way.
Exactly.
Which allow room for there to be a non-specific answer.
That's right,
Which is actually very specific.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's it then?
Yes, that's it.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's very self-deprecating of you.
Yeah, well, there you go. You asked me to keep it brief.
Yeah, I did, because I think we're going to run out of time. But again, after 2, we may have to shorten it to 2. My second was going to be Graham Henry. Now, I've told you about Graham Henry before.
Right.
This actually also goes back to Wales, when he was the manager of the Wales rugby team.
Yep.
And we'd signed him up as a columnist for the paper. And so I used to see him from time to time. We'd have lunch and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. This one particular time, though, he called me and my then wife for dinner to have with him and his wife.
Lovely.
And also the guy who was his... I think the chairman of the Welsh Rugby Union, and his wife. So there were 6 of us in the Hillside in Cardiff having this very nice sort of professional dinner. And he liked a drop of the red wine, did old Graham Henry.
Yes.
Anyway, in the midst of this this dinner, he drops on me the fact that he's been selected to be the coach of the British Lions.
Wow.
Which was a massive story at the time.
Was, yeah.
And there's a guy called Peter Jackson, who was the rugby correspondent of the Daily Mail.
Yeah, I remember him well.
Who didn't even have it. Nobody had it.
Right.
And Graham said to me, nobody knows about this. And I said, well, when are they going to announce it? He said, I don't think they're going to announce it till next week. He said, well, and I said to him, well, we're going to have to blow the story. I said, you've just told me I can't walk around with this story in my head without publishing it.
Yes.
So we're going to have to do it. And I remember the night that we decided to break the story, there was some story about David Beckham that the main edition of the Mirror was doing, which I threw off the front page and splashed on Graham Henry.
Yeah, excellent.
And had a call from Piers Morgan to say, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
I said, look, trust me, this is a much bigger story in Wales than anything else. I said, I'll stick Beckham up in the top right-hand corner, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
And so it proved, and everybody else followed the story up the next day.
Yeah,
and it was a great dinner, another great evening.
Terrific coup.
There
Excellent. Does a wedding reception count as dinner?
Yeah, if you have dinner there.
Well, it was dinner. Yeah. So I went to Joe Cole's wedding. Joe and I had been doing a bit of work.
So you're going to do a third one? I don't think you should bother.
I thought you said we were.
No, I don't think we can. No, we haven't got time. No,
okay. Well,
we've got to go to Dave Luddy.
Oh, have we? Okay.
Yeah, because he's at Queen's.
Joe Cole's wedding reception, anyway.
Joe Cole's wedding. Well, no, you should have started with that one.
No, shouldn't, because John Terry wouldn't speak to me through the whole evening. Every time I tried to say hello.
Well, that's a better story than the other two.
He just blanked me. Yeah.
Well, that's a much better story than the other two.
You know, I didn't want to be too big-headed about it all, you know what I mean?
Shocking. Let's go to Dave Luddy at Queen's.
Yeah.
Well, it's all about Andy Murray today, the defending champion. He's chasing a 6th Aegon title in 9 years. He starts his campaign a little later as he spearheads 5 of the world's top 10. He's going to play British rival Alias Bedini, an opponent he beat in last year's event. Fit again, James Ward, semi-finalist 6 years ago, just starting in sweltering heat against the Frenchman Julien Benneteau. While Cameron Norrie, having been at an American university, just turned professional, takes on the American Sam Querrey. Also in action, Stan Wawrinka, Marin Cilic, and on court is Milos Raonic, who's locked at 3 games all in the first set against the Australian Thanasi Kokkinakis. Dave Luddy, Queen's Club.
Thank you very much, Dave. We'll be hearing more from Dave Luddy throughout the course of the afternoon. Of course, Alan says this. Porky pretends to listen to you, but he really is thinking, I wish you'd hurry up. No, I'm bored.
No, not
it's
at all.
Very harsh, that.
No, I wouldn't say that at all.
Wouldn't you?
Go on, nominate a third one very quickly.
No, I haven't got a third one.
Oh, I haven't got a third one.
We're out of time.
OK.
I know I can't do it.
Right.
This is talkSPORT.
The British and Irish Lions Tour of New Zealand 2017 on talkSPORT. On location with the Times and the Sunday Times. Quality coverage of the entire Lions Tour from leading writers and ex-players.
British and Irish Lions were in action this morning with a clash against the Chiefs. Here to dissect the Lions' performance is Owen Slot, Chief Rugby Correspondent from The Times. Owen, a very good evening to you where you are. Very good afternoon from us.
Hey, how are you going?
Yeah, not bad
Very
at
well,
all.
Thanks.
It looks as though the sort of general perception is that perhaps Warren Gatland's got them going just about at the right time.
Yeah, this tour started slowly, but it was always going to when you put a new team together. The question has been from the start whether they would get up to speed, whether all the timing and the understanding and everything that makes a team would happen in time for the Test match next Saturday. What we have undoubtedly seen is a team that looked disparate and unconnected 3 weeks ago is now beginning to blend and look rather nice. And today we saw some really good performances from the what is effectively the midweek team, so the B team to the Test team. So everything is gradually looking better. Just the big question that we don't know, that we'll find out on Saturday, is whether all this improvement has got them up to the phenomenally high level of the All Blacks on Saturday or not.
OK, Owen, in the world of rugby, as you are immersed in it at the moment, when will the starting 15 individually know they're going to play? Will they have 2 or 3 nights, sleepless nights now, worrying whether they're going to make the starting lineup, or will they have already been told, or are they told on the day of the match?
Good question. And the answer is they don't know themselves. They don't know when they're going to be told. What I can tell you is that tomorrow afternoon, New Zealand time, the final selection meeting will take place between Warren Gatland and his coaches, and the players they will then announce it on Thursday morning New Zealand time, which is Wednesday night UK time. Yeah. The players don't know between selection and announcement at what point they're going to be informed.
Yeah. And did they come out of this game pretty much injury-free as such in terms of the way the tour has gone? Because obviously they've had to draft in some emergency players, haven't they?
Yeah, the injury count seemed pretty good actually. No major concerns. Pretty much the whole team made it through from beginning to end. There were some players on the pitch today who we thought were in a last audition for the Test team, if you like. The back three remains very competitive for the Lions, and Elliot Daly significantly was brought off after 60 minutes. Now, if he'd stayed on for much longer, then you'd have thought, well, he ain't going to play on Saturday because he'll have played had too much game time in his legs. But he was the first substitute of the night, and that may have been a message. Obviously, we'll find out. But that's the key one for me today.
How do you see it going now? Now that the time of reckoning has come, Owen, can you give us a prediction of how you feel it's going to go?
Yes, I can, and I'm sorry, but I'm going to be negative. I don't think the Lions are up to speed yet. And even when they are, who knows if they'd ever be good enough. The way I see it is I feel it's very, very hard for them to win on Saturday just because This is their first Test match against a team of that calibre at that level altogether. So I think they'll struggle to win on Saturday. So the big thing for me is, will they take the learnings and improve and carry on that improvement curve sufficiently so when the second test comes around on Saturday week, that's the one that I think they might win if this continues to go in the right direction. If that happens, then we've got a spectacular finale on our hands.
OK, that's fantastic.
Indeed, because we saw the All Blacks getting beaten earlier on this year in America, didn't we, by Ireland, which was very unexpected. And so they do occasionally just have a bad performance, don't they?
Yeah, they've since they won the World Cup in 2011, they've lost 4 times. So they don't have a great record for losing. The first test in Auckland on Saturday is they're at Auckland Stadium as Eden Park, and they haven't lost a game there since 1994.
Yeah.
So that's not very encouraging either. I mean, actually, you could go on and on with these stats and find reasons why the All Blacks will win this thing.
Indeed.
But the point is, we get to Saturday, and there's justification, there's reason for hope, there's reason for believing. It's still an outside chance, but it's a chance.
It's a chance indeed. Owen, thanks very much indeed. OK, that was Owen Slot from The Times, live from Hamilton. Pick up your copy of The Times and The Sunday Times during the Lions tour for more great quality analysis.
The British and Irish Lions Tour of New Zealand 2017 on talkSPORT. On location with The Times and The Sunday Times. Pick up your copy throughout the Lions Tour for insightful commentary.
In Glastonbury in some ways, isn't he?
I think he may be.
Weekend.
I think he may be.
Yeah.
One thing I didn't know, I knew all about his drug problems during his life and his eccentricities, but Paul McCartney described his record, God Only Knows, as the greatest ever pop single.
I really do like that song, actually.
I do. I think it's a beautiful
I
song.
think it's a wonderful song.
Yeah.
Well, that's nice to know.
Yeah.
Now, in a sort of a bit of exhaust, I suppose, coming out of the lithography scenario, somebody has tweeted me a picture of the man that must not be named, and I don't mean John Lennon. I mean the food critic.
Right.
And David says this, you want to reply. What it is, it's an eBay auction to win a dinner date with the said man who should not be named. Yeah. And guess what the bid is up to?
Go on.
620 quid.
620?
So have dinner with that plank. I wouldn't pay that.
That's not much. People have paid more.
£620 to have dinner with someone you don't like.
People have paid more to have dinner with us, believe me.
What?
They have.
Well, I've never had dinner with anyone that's supposed to be paying for it.
Well, we have.
Are you telling me that when we go out to have dinner with people, they've paid you a bunch of money and you've never given any of it to me?
No, but
is that what you say?
No, but we have entered charity auctions before and selflessly given ourselves to going out for dinner. Well, I did with Mr. Brazil, put it that way.
Well, when you say we, you see, the trouble with you is you conflate everything into one sort of big round ball.
Well, it's the royal
You've never done anything like that with me.
We as talkSPORT presenters. Anyway,
you have to pay me to have dinner with you. The only reason you and I have had dinner was the last time. In fact, last time we had proper lunch, I think, apart from when we were in Edinburgh, was when we had our annual general meeting
at the Chinese restaurant.
The Chinese restaurant in Gerrard Street.
Yeah, and it went well.
It did go well.
And the company's gone well since, hasn't it?
It has, yeah.
Are you sure?
Well, I mean, you keep telling me it's going well.
Well, I think
I've got nothing to do with it, really.
Right,
I don't get involved in the grubby money side of things.
Yeah, well, thank God for that, otherwise we'd be bankrupt.
Yeah, well, indeed. Now, we are the Two Mics on talkSPORT, of course, with Wix, and every day we give away a £100 Wix gift card to the best caller. And who do you think the best caller was today?
Well, without doubt, it was Luke, the Spurs fan,
yes,
who made a very, very cogent defence of
He was the guy that was very positive about everything.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
You couldn't help but thinking that somewhere just below the surface, though, where there were doubts.
OK, in that case, he's a good Spurs fan, because if you show doubts about your own team, I tell you what, your opponents, the fans of other teams, will jump on it.
I see.
Like a hungry lion.
I like a hungry lion, really.
Yeah.
Final tweet of the day, I think it's a good one to close it on. Darren says, MG, not only has Porky only been on one stag do, he's only ever been out to dinner twice as well.
That's right, yeah, absolutely. Well, they weren't even dinners, they were lunches, both of them.
No, they're both cancelled. This is talkSPORT. Don't forget to follow the Two Mics at the Two Mics on Twitter and on YouTube. Just look for Two Mics TV.